Good evening. It's now just a bit past 5. So the Planning Commission of the City of Lancaster, please come to order. Tonight, our invocation will be offered by Vice Chair Hall. The pledge will be led by Commissioner Harvey. If you'd all please stand.
Bow your heads with me. God, we hold close the family of Otto Warmbier as he's passed into your arms. God, heal Representative Steve Scalise. God, thank you for the Capitol Police officers, Crystal Griner and David Bailey, when they put their lives on the line to protect our way of life. God, thank you for protecting the thin blue line and comforting their families. God, look after our firefighters as they rev up for a very hot fire season this year. God, look after our servicemen and women so far from home. Comfort the families of the USS Fitzgerald. Protect them as they protect us. Thank you for staff that prepares these meetings. Thank you for guiding this commission and members in making decisions. God, thank you for our blessings on our citizens and our city. In your name, amen.
Please remain standing and join us as we honor our nation's flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome all. Have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Diana Cook.
Present.
Commissioner Miguel Coronado. Absent. Commissioner Cassandra Harvey.
Present.
Commissioner Drew Mercy.
Present.
Commissioner Sandy Smith.
Here.
Vice Chair Randy Hall.
Here.
Chairman James Vose.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Had any communication from Commissioner Coronado?
No, Mr. Chairman, we have not.
So how many meetings has he missed? 6?
Yeah, we'll have to go back and look.
I'd like to know. Thank you. Public business from the floor. If an individual is unable to stay for the entire meeting, we offer a short period of time that folks may offer testimony on any agendized item. Typically, we'll give you a couple of minutes to state what you have to say. If we have early speakers, Mr. Lidke?
No indications of that,
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Then when agenda items are called, we will call on the applicant to make a presentation typically, or if it's an uncontested hearing, we may defer and not hear from an applicant or a staff report and take immediate action on the item. This commission meets generally the week prior to this meeting for a staff briefing. It's a public hearing or public meeting, but not a hearing, nor do we take action, nor do we deliberate for that matter. We take input from staff and ask questions typically and get our direct responses from staff. This is the only action item meeting before the public tonight. So, and I should mention individuals that fill out speakers cards would have a period of 3 minutes to state what they care to state on any item before us. The applicant, however, we defer a sufficient amount of time for them to make their case, and quite often the commission gets into questions and answers with applicants. However, the public is limited to a 3-minute response. First item of business is our consent calendar, which is the approval of the minutes of our regular meeting of May 15, 2017. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting of May 15th, 2017.
Thank you. Second? Anyone?
Second.
Thank you. I would make note on item number 10 on page 2 of the minutes at the top of the page. where it mentioned Commissioner Cook recused herself, it does not indicate that she left the dais during the deliberation at that time. So it's just a matter of information that it's understood from the record that Commissioner Cook was not present when the case was presented because she had recused herself. She did return at the end of that hearing, and when item 2 was heard, and for the remainder of the meeting. So with that comment, I don't know if we call it an amendment necessarily, but with that comment, how do you vote, please?
Motion passes 4-0 with 2 abstentions.
Thank you. We'll take, we're going to take item number 4 out of sequence, I believe, which is the same item we just discussed from the previous agenda. Commissioner Cook?
I'll recuse myself.
And you need to state the reason why, please.
I recuse myself because I work at this, at Ellis and John, the property that's in question.
Thank you. So, item 4. We heard this last time, but we did not have a quorum, so we took no action on it. So may we have a brief report again, please?
Yes, members of the commission, this particular site is the former Lancaster Community Hospital site, along with medical offices that exist on parcels to the north of that. That entire property, or properties, I should say, are currently designated by the general plan as H Hospital and are zoned as H Hospital. The hospital zone within the city's municipal code is a pretty limiting zone. It is really designed specifically for sites where hospitals are going to be built or where they exist. And as a result, the types of uses that are allowed are very restrictive. Staff is asking you to look at initiating a change on that site to allow for a different land use and zoning designation, perhaps office professional or something of that type, that would allow a wider range of use than simply permitted under the hospital zone. As was noted, and you do have a speaker on this item, the southern half of that overall site has been redeveloped with essentially a skilled nursing facility. That is a permitted use under the current hospital zoning designation, and the owner of that particular facility did speak to you last time. I would appear that they want to speak again.
All right, thank you. Any questions for him? We hear from the speaker then, please.
Yes, Daniel Wasinski.
Mr. Wazinski, welcome back.
I wasn't sure I was going to speak. With your permission, just very briefly, as he had stated, we redeveloped the facility as a skilled nursing facility from a hospital. However, the land use under hospital gives us certain, it's less restrictive than giving it to another zoning purpose, as well as it really doesn't fit in with the other zonings that we would want maybe you would consider for our use, as well as in the code. The way I saw it was that it calls out convalescent hospital, which is what a skilled nursing facility is. We're not asking for. I understand the property that's on the northern side of us would like to change their zoning, and we'd love for them to thrive and do well as businesses can come in over there. We don't want to restrict them, and if it meant us writing off for them to do that, that would be great. But really, just in brief, we would like to keep our zoning the way it is so we could operate, because there are certain higher acuity patients in the facility, as well as it seems that this it would fit with what we're trying to do over there. But the property to the north of us, if they could change, if we could split, there is already two separate parcels. We would love for them to become an office or a medical office, whatever it may be that they would like to do over there. We fully support them in, or if you would like to support them, we would love for them to change. But really, that's, as we had said last time, this is, it seems to make sense that with the hospital zoning the way it is today.
The current land use, does that impact your state licensing? The way it's-
It may. The problem that, and this is something that I've discussed with OSHPA, the Office of Statewide Health Planning Department. I was there 2 weeks ago in the southern district with the chair over there is fellow Gordon Oakley. We had discussed that a lot of cities, when they got their zoning and they started mapping things out, they included skilled nursing facilities under different names. So every city very few cities actually call it skilled nursing facilities. They'll call it a convalescent hospital, a convalescent home. In another city that I'm dealing with, it falls under under community center. So it really varies from city to city, which is why we're a little concerned when we start moving into into trying to take away from the hospital zone.
I understand. All right. Well, the last thing we want to do is have a negative impact on your licensing and your ability to operate. That's my opinion. So, all right, I appreciate your comments. Any other questions? Mr. Hall?
If we give direction to staff to look into making the zoning more flexible for you, will you work with staff to give them the ideas that you are after, so it would be suitable to keep the licensing?
I mean, possibly, obviously, it would be in your hands. I don't know if I could ask a question back, but my question is there reason to switch the zoning on the whole parcel, or I guess there's 3 parcels there right now. Wouldn't it make more sense to switch the northern parcel and keep ours in the current hospital zone the way it is today?
That's kind of my point of what I asked you, is I want to make sure that when we do have this brought back before us with the recommendation to City Council to change the zoning of that property,
right,
one of those 3 parcels, that we get it correct the first time. So that's why I was hoping that you would work with city staff to make sure that they understood your requirements and
Yeah, we could obviously address those issues. The main concern, one of the main concerns for me is we in this facility have some unique beds that are not similar to the other facilities you have here in the city, that they're being subacute beds, which is in between skilled nursing and hospital beds. I'm afraid that those beds, which have special requirements and had an additional cost to develop, are going to become non-useful anymore if we were to change the license or have to change the license because of the zoning. So that's my concern, and I guess I don't know enough, but we could work together.
thank you.
Very good. Anyone else? All right, thank you, sir. Any other speakers?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Chairman Bose,
Go ahead.
I'd like to provide the direction for staff on the new zoning for the professional and medical office possibility, or try to prevent the impact on the current uses, and to have as much flexibility in the zoning that we come up with as possible.
Yeah, it may require just a complete revision of the age zone, or create a specific zone for skilled nursing facilities and those types of operations.
Yes, that's certainly something we can take a look at as a part of it.
All right, anyone else? Okay. So the action item is really to give you direction. You don't require a vote on that?
I'd prefer a vote on it.
All right. So the motion would be to direct staff to coordinate with the property owners the most suitable land use zoning revisions that meet the business models that they might promote. That'd be an appropriate motion?
To prevent impact on current uses and the flexibility.
I understand that, yes. Staff can work
And
with
Vice Chair Hall made that motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All clear? Please vote.
that. Motion passes 5-0.
And Commissioner Cook has rejoined us. All right, we're back on agenda. For the record, we have received uncontested letters, actually, we just received one on 5A tonight, 5B, 5C, and 6, item 6. We also received modifications to the agenda on page 3, and agenda item number 2 on page 4, agenda item number 3, the memorandum requesting a 60-day extension. Item 7, some modifications to conditions and a modification to the proposed resolution. And item 8, an amendment to the resolution on page 3. Those were all posted on the city website, so those were available to be reviewed prior to the meeting, and those changes are included in the binder on the rear if anyone's interested to look at them. We have also received, as soon as I get to it, we also received a letter on item number 7 from a concerned citizen, whoever that may be. And item number 8, a letter from Ms. Argon, it looked like. And I'm not sure of this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These are all on item number 8, proposed, it appears. Everyone have copies of those?
Yes,
All right, we just received those today, so they haven't, I certainly haven't read them, maybe the other members have. When we get to that item, we'll decide what to do. All right, so we're back on agenda. The next item is item number 2, which is a continued public hearing. The public hearing remains open on this item. Item number 2 is an environmental impact report 1502, a specific plan 1501, and a tentative tract map number 73507. And for the record, we had reviewed this last time. We only had 4 commissioners here. We also read into the record the documents we had received and reviewed, which is the final environmental impact report, a mitigation monitoring and reporting plan, the findings of fact, and on the environmental effects of the Levante North project, and a copy of the Avante North specific plan dated April 2017. We've all had an opportunity to review those documents in advance of the meeting, plus all of the staff report and all the other related items. So, let's have a brief staff report on this, please.
Good evening, Chair Vos and Commissioners. Again, this is a request to certify environmental document impact report number 15-02, approve Avante North specific plan number 15-01, and approve tentative tract map 73507 to subdivide 237.25 gross acres into 753 single-family lots, 2 neighborhood park sites, and an open space area serving stormwater detention and water quality filtration purposes. And just the background, at last month's Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission voted to continue the public hearing for this request for 30 days to allow additional time for the Planning Commission to review the project. At this time, staff is available to answer any additional questions.
All right, thank you. Members? Anything? Go ahead.
It was pretty much fleshed out in the last meeting. I don't have any more to add.
Thank you.
We did receive a copy of Exhibit A, which is the facts and findings regarding the environmental impact report, which is an attachment to the proposed resolution. And I had all my questions answered. The applicant here and wish to address us.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Michael White.
Mr. White, welcome back.
Thank you. Mike White with CV Communities. I'm just available to answer any questions you may have, and I appreciate the time. Thank
All
you.
right, very good. You've had a chance to review the slight changes in the staff report,
Yes, we're in concurrence with everything.
concurred with everything,
Absolutely.
no heartburn at all.
Not about this project, but I have other problems, but we're good here. It's a little hot out, so.
All right, very good. All right, thank you. We have speakers on this item, I'm sure.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have one other speaker, Lisa Four.
Ms. Four, welcome back.
Well, again, I'm the only one here. My family moved here in 1964. My father was a proud service of the LA County Sheriff's Department for 30 years. My mother was a nurse at community hospital. And we grew up here. I grew up here. And my parents bought a house over on the east side, and behind us was a vacant lot. And eventually, back in 1971, LA County, in their infinite wisdom, decided to put in low-income housing behind my parents' house. And that wasn't the first one. It was called Pioneer Gardens. I don't know if you remember it, back on 4th Street East and Avenue K back in the day. Since then, they've continued the tradition of low-income housing with Trend, and flash forward to today, and yet we still are the low-income housing leader in LA County. Which bears in mind the fact that in the 2012 census, the average median income in the 93534 zip code was about $47,000. And in the 93534 zip code, you currently have about over 23% under the poverty level. This plan, although it's great in its conception, its original conception was R7000 with a park, all privately maintained, which we all agreed to. We thought that was a good idea. When you reduce the lot size down to 5250, you make it affordable housing. Again, inviting individuals with lower income to come out here, add more crime, congestion, and problems to our community. I know you raised the eyebrow like that's not going to happen. It's going to happen. It's already happened.
Lisa, I'll raise my eyebrow any way I want, but let me just say one thing. People who are low income aren't necessarily criminals, nor are they bad for a community. And I can't imagine a project of this magnitude providing what you may describe as low-income housing. You're looking at $400,000 and up resale values. So go ahead and continue, and I'll give you as much time as you like.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. My concern is that with 5250 minimum lot size, you may contend that eventually, someday down the road, it might get $400,000. But right now, in today's environment, nobody's going to pay that much for a house with a 5250 lot line on the west side with mellow roofs. And all it's going to do eventually when the population comes and goes is add more non-owner occupied, which about 40% of the housing right now is non-owner occupied rentals. And personally, in my own personal belief, if you really want to up the average in this community and make it worthwhile, stop building everything, all the housing. And eventually the housing prices will come back up and more solid citizens will move to this area and improve the area. I know that's not right, and I know it's not going to happen, but can we at least approve what's originally there, the R7000 with the park? It just makes a lot of sense to me that you don't want to add that additional amount of people to a high school system that can't support it. Quartz Hill High is already inundated. All the elementary schools are over inundated, and there's no more middle schools except for Joe Walker and Hillview. So I know I'm going to lose on this proposition. I know you're going to vote for it, but I just thought I'd make myself known. Thank
We
you.
appreciate your comments, and they are a concern to us as well as to you. However, if this community doesn't grow, it goes backwards. If we don't provide adequate housing for the people who are coming in here to work at various industries, we're going backwards. What would you prefer? To go backwards or forward?
Currently, Jim,
Would you prefer to
it
go
doesn't
backwards or
sustain
forward?
that. If over 23% are in the poverty level, how many of those people are working?
93534. What zip code is this in?
This is 3.6, and yes, there is less than a
That's the
poverty
point.
level, but you.
That's the point.
You're going to import it from the other zip codes.
That's your opinion. I don't agree with it.
And I disagree. It's just going to happen.
You have the
Whether you're
right to
alive to
disagree.
see it or not, it's just going to
You have the
happen.
right to disagree, and make sure you mark your calendar, because Avanti North is this project, and Avanti South will be coming along shortly thereafter with another 1,200 units, I believe, or somewhere in
More
that.
than that, with 325 apartments. Now, what kind of people?
And we're not talking about that tonight, so thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Mr. White? Tell us about your low-income housing, would you please?
I hesitate to come up, but, the only thing I would point out that in the characterization of the original plan, we were 7,000 square foot minimum. I agree with that. The park,
What does a 7,000 square foot lot net produce? It's not 7,000 square feet, is it?
it's a 70 by 100 foot dimension. It's a lot.
Less
Put a house on it.
Less the public right-of-way.
No, it's outside the public right-of-way. And the problem with the 7,000, that plan in its day was what was accepted. It had 7,000 square foot lots and one big park.
2000 and when?
The original plan? Okay, so it's been a number of years since it was approved. And at the time, a lot of developers would just go out and put the same lot, all the same lot size, and then build houses of various sizes. Big ones, small ones. So there was not a distinction between lot sizes in terms of architecture and size of houses. The park that they had at the time too was a 20-acre, just a big park in the center of the community, but it also served as a detention basin. So if you got a major event, you couldn't use the park. So we thought that the best thing to do for the community, rather than build the same lot size over and over and over again, 753 of the same lot, was to add some variety and provide some 5,000s, but also provide some 6,000s, some 7,000s, some 8,000 square foot lots that are big, that average 6,900 square feet, but they go up to 8,400 square feet. And have that progression of lots go from the adjacent community with the larger lots, and as you go further, I guess that would be west, we'd have them smaller, so there's less impact. I don't view a 5,000 square foot lot as low income. I view this project as meeting the needs of the entire community by providing affordable housing and housing that this community needs. You're going to have a lot of job growth in the next few years. with all the industry that's coming here, and a lot of people want to live here, but there's not a lot of for sale houses. And she's right, if we shut down growth, prices will go up, but that's all you get. You get nothing else. You don't get parks, you don't get more schools, because schools are funded by development. So I do respectfully disagree with her. I think this is a good project. I think it's going to meet the needs of the community, and I look forward to your approval.
How are you addressing the school issue with your project?
Well, we're going to form a CFD with the school district, which will allow our school fees to actually occur sooner as opposed to the end of the project as the last house is built. There is an issue with schools and available schools in the community in the short term, but in the long term, as Lancaster solves its housing problems by getting new projects online, those schools will come because the demand will be there, the fees will be there, the funds will be there from the state, and
That's Westside Union you're talking about,
yes,
a CFD with?
yes, yes.
And the other agencies that reviewed this specific plan included the Antelope Valley Joint Union High School District
Yes.
and all the other agencies, Waterworks District.
We were working
Fire
directly with
department.
Waterworks, yes. AVEC, we've gone through a thorough review. It's been almost 4 years of design review, and so we're patient. But I don't like the characterization of the project in that way. I don't think that's what the intent was.
Well, I'm glad you're patient. I'm not very patient with information that is just patently false.
Agreed.
I've lived here some time, and I have some experience in the real estate industry, and we certainly need a good mix of housing in our community. Those people that some folks want to label are citizens of our country and deserve adequate housing and a
Agreed.
place to live.
Agreed.
Now, if 400,000 is your price point, or 369.5, or whatever that might be, I'm guessing it's probably in the 370, 380 number right now.
I think the average for the whole project, it tends to go that way, but you'll never know till you get to the market. But with housing and constrained in this community, there's demand for housing, and with demand goes a pricing appreciation. And plus the amenities too. We're not just doing a standard subdivision with no parks. We have trails. We have a lot of open space. The parks. I mean, it's a very well thought out plan.
I know you testified last time that the project then, that your company may consider developing a portion of the project for housing, or you may not. The purpose would be to do the entire land development portion of it and spin off finished lots, in effect, to merchant builders.
Yes, and that is probably even escalated more since the last time we met in terms of our desire to do that. We have a home building arm within our company, and we find that when we do master plan communities, I've been doing home building for 30 years. I've done a lot of different master plan communities, and sometimes if the builder, we have a little bit of skin in the game with the development, it tends to provide confidence to the industry that we're willing to go shoulder to shoulder with them. So we see this project as one that we'll actually develop.
Curious, your company, how many projects similar to this have you,
Me personally, or this company?
your company and yourself?
Well, the company, relatively new to single-family development of this magnitude in maybe the last 6 years. The home building operation of our company is called City Ventures. We do a lot of urban infill. They'll build 2 5-acre parcels with higher density on it, more kind of urban development. The group that I'm affiliated with that we're involved with, we come from a public home builder background. If I should have kept track in my 30 years, but we probably developed 15 to 20,000 lots. I mean, all across Southern California. So this is right in our sites. This is something we've done a lot of in Riverside County, San Bernardino County, Orange County, and we're very competent in it. And we think we'll do a good job for this one.
How'd you get along with our staff?
Oh, your staff is great. It worked very well. I mean, it's a collaborative effort, and so with collaboration, it sometimes takes a little longer. But, I think at the end product, it's like a fine wine. You don't want to open it until it's ready, so I'll just say that. But we're good.
Good. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any other speakers?
No other cards, Mr.
All right.
Chairman.
So without objection, we'll close the public hearing, consider a motion.
Move adopt resolution number 17-15, certifying the final EIR number 15-02, SCH 2015-111056, approving tentative track map number 73507 and recommending to the City Council approval of SP number 15-01, approval of tentative track map number 73507. Is not valid until the effective date of SP number 1501.
Thank you.
That was a long one.
Second.
Thank you. Anything further? Please vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, thank you. So this will be set for hearing before the City Council in
Yes.
August?
Specific plan, probably in July.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the second meeting in July.
That would be the 25th.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Next item, item number 3 is conditional use permit number 1508, tentative track number 72534. It's a continued public hearing. On this item, the request is to continue it further to August 21st, 2017. Do you have speakers on this?
No, Mr. Chairman.
No. All right, then we don't need a staff report, unless somebody wants to hear it. All right. So without objection, we'll close the public hearing, consider a motion.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing to the August 21st, 2017 Planning Commission meeting to give the applicant more time to complete the final modifications.
Second.
Thank you. Anything further? Please vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, thank you. We've already heard number 4, so number 5. These are new public hearings. As I mentioned previously, we received uncontested letters on these 3 items. So without objection, the public hearing's open on 5A, conditional use permit 1412. Anyone care to hear a staff report on this? I do have a couple questions, and I just wanted to be sure that it was clarified on this. On the staff report, the June 22nd, 2015 staff report, under the analysis project description, it defines the 75 multi-family unit project. 37 are supportive housing units for the use by veterans recovering from homelessness. 19 are supportive housing units for use by individuals and families recovering from homelessness. And 18 units are housing units for very low income households. Social services will be offered in this, at the site actually, including mental health and employment services. So is that correct? That staff report definition correct?
Yes, that is correct. And as we were talking about, this is not solely just for veterans. It's a portion of that.
Right. Half is identified. However, the other half is other folks. Okay. All right, we have any speakers on this?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anything further from staff? No? Okay. So without objection, we'll close the public hearing, consider a motion.
I move to grant a one-year extension to June 22nd, 2018, based on the findings contained in the staff report and previously approved conditions.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Anything further? Please vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next item is item 5B. The public hearing is open on tentative track map number 63095. Do we have speakers on this item?
No speakers on this item, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, this is the second of 3 available extension requests. All right, anything from staff, members? Nope. Without objection, public hearing is open. Consider the motion.
Make a motion to grant a one-year extension to June 18, 2018, based on the findings contained in the staff report.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Further? Please vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Item 5C. Public hearing is open on vesting tentative tract map number 64249. We have speakers on this?
No speakers on this one, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. This is the third and final one-year extension of this map. Anything further from staff? Members? Without objection, public hearing is closed. Let's consider a motion.
I move that we grant a one-year extension to June 19th, 2018, based on the findings contained in the staff report and subject to the revised conditions list, attachment to resolution number 06-54.
Thank you.
I'll second.
This was B. Do you think we should mention that we got opposition letters to it?
I didn't see.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, Vice Chair Hall just pointed out, I did not see them. There were a couple of opposition letters on 5B,
Yes.
which we've already taken action on. So maybe we have a motion to reconsider, please, from someone?
We have a motion on the floor and seconded.
That's all right. That's all right. It'll take precedence. Motion to reconsider number 5B. Cook?
I'll make a motion that we reconsider action tentative track map 5B, number 63095.
Thank you. Have a second, please?
Second.
Okay. Thank you. So, let's take a moment to review those letters. Okay, we're back on the record. So the motion is to reconsider. We have two letters. Yeah. From two individuals who live nearby, plus a copy of the public notice, which weren't identified to us as letters objecting, at least to me. So at any rate, appreciate it in the future if somebody could identify the ones objecting or in favor. All right, what's your pleasure on the reconsideration of 5B?
I just wanted to make sure that everybody had a chance to know that we had these letters, so it would be my opinion that we should probably allow the original motion to stand, so.
Okay, that's your motion?
No, the motion was to reconsider.
To reconsider it? All in favor of reconsidering it? The response would be no if you want the previous action to stand. Or yes if you want to reconsider it. All right? Please vote.
Okay, reconsideration fails.
Right.
06.
So the original motion stands.
Original motion.
Current
stands.
motion on the floor is to approve tentative track map number 642495C. No, it's been moved and seconded. So, any further discussion on that one? Nope. Ready to vote? Please vote.
Did our minute takers keep up with us?
She did.
Motion passes 6-0.
At reinforcements. Ms. Reyes, nice to see you here. Sydney's doing just great. We threw her 2 curveballs tonight. The meeting's not over yet. You guys ready to proceed, or do you need a few minutes? You're okay? All right. Yeah. Item 6. This is a new public hearing on conditional use permit 1702. So the public hearing is open on this item. We have speakers, and so we can have a staff report,
Yes.
please.
Chair Wilson, Commissioners, the applicant is requesting approval for alcoholic beverage control type 47 license and for live entertainment. Live entertainment would consist of live music, karaoke, disc jockey, or stand-up comedy. The applicant's initial request was to have alcohol available during all hours of operation. However, staff is recommending approval according to the recommendations from the Sheriff's Department, which are discussed in just the next section. The Lancaster Sheriff's Station has indicated to the planning section that they do not oppose the applicant's request. Additionally, alcohol sales shall be limited to between the hours of 11 a.m. and 12 a.m. Conditions established in resolution number 1528, the Lancaster Municipal Code 17.42.070, and those written specifically for this project should ensure the use does not adversely impact neighboring businesses or residences. Therefore, staff recommends to the Planning Commission approval conditional use permit 17-02. And that concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available for any questions.
All right, thank you. We also received copy of the proposed menu for the facility as well as related site plans and all the rest of them. Do you have speakers?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Carlo Shahadi.
Mr. Shahadi, welcome.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners, City staff. How are you? I'm here to answer any questions you might have for the project. I also have initial operating manual, copies for each if you guys have any questions. And that's about it.
You are the applicant?
Yes, sir.
You are the operator?
Yes, sir. Operator. We are a full-on operator. I will be having a manager dealing with daily operations, full-on time. I will be overseeing that manager.
You have other
Minimum
businesses?
5-year experience would be my requirement.
You have other businesses of this type?
I am been in the valley for a while. Was actually when I was 5, came out here. I local realtor in the area. Worked for Keller Williams in Palmdale. Been in the restaurant industry pretty much from family and this and that in my life. I went out to Jacksonville, Florida in 2011, 12 to 13. Ran a restaurant with my uncle, similar use in Jacksonville. Was their assistant manager, handling daily operations and whatnot, dealing with customers and training modules for employees. Got too humid for me out there, had to come back. So came back out here and just did real estate for a while. Saw this location, came into the city, spoke to a couple of the planners, which are great help actually. They helped me get together some stuff. We went through conditions and all that, and now we're here. Hoping for the best.
You hired a good architect too, right?
Yeah, I did. Merrill's actually, it was very good.
That's good. So, some of us had expressed the potential concern about the understanding of operating a restaurant with a Type 47 license.
Yes, sir.
And that as you know, a full-service restaurant must produce 51% or more of their revenue from the sales of food.
Yes, sir. I was explained to that by
So you
staff.
understand that requirement?
Yes, sir. Yes. And books have to be available upon request. I'm sorry.
You're good with that?
Yes, I'm good with that.
Good.
We're gonna have good food, so I'm not worried.
All right, good. Any questions from anyone? Go ahead.
I do. I have a question.
Yes.
Where you're locating, how are you going to handle the traffic parking? I'm just curious of do you feel that's going to be an issue for you?
No, we have a lot of parking space over there. We had a parking map done, I believe, by Merrill to city staff, and it was a good amount of parking. I don't think we're gonna have an issue. It's a big shopping center. It's a really
There's
big
what,
shopping
2 or 3 other restaurant operations in the center?
There's Tokyo, and it's called Del Mar, I believe. What is it? I forgot what it was called. Rockamar, I'm sorry. Rockamar. And that's it. In Arena Center, most of the small businesses close around 6, 7-ish. Arena Center, which occupies a corner, a lot of parking spaces there. I didn't really count them. There's also side parking where we are as well. And pretty much, I'm going to say the southeast side of the center too. There's more spaces.
And you understand that the hours of operation of the sale of alcoholic beverages is from 11 a.m. to midnight?
Yes, read all the conditions thoroughly.
You're all good with that? Okay. Anything from anyone else? All right, thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Have any other speakers?
Merle McClernand.
It is the good architect.
I hope so.
That's what he just said.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a pretty straightforward project. It's going into a suite that previously had alcohol in it and had pizza and other things. So the actual infrastructure is there. So it's going to be pretty easy to develop. And it's a decent area for this. He's going to do a pretty good job inside and appearance on the outside of the building. And that's some of the conditions that he's agreeing to. Other than that, I'm just here to answer questions.
Very good, thank you. All right, anything further? Any other speakers?
Yes, Fran Saraceras.
Oh, all right. Fran. Nice to see you tonight.
Oh, thank you. Good evening,
Want
ladies.
to try this, Fran? or-
Yeah, that's good, that's good. Good evening, Chairman Voss, Vice Chairman Hall, Commissioners, and staff, and everybody else. Hello. I just had a few, my thing was, my questions was going to be, I didn't think there was going to be enough parking in that little shopping area, but they seem to feel that it is. And I also was concerned about the hours of operation. And I didn't quite hear what Chris was saying, but he reiterated, said from 11 to 12 p.m. And what hours is the restaurant going to be open?
The hours of operation for the restaurant are earlier than that.
So then the restaurant will close a certain hour and then the rest will be for the entertainment?
Say that again?
So are they going to be closing or not serving food, stop serving food at a certain hour where the entertainment will step in
No,
afterwards?
they're required to provide a full menu when they're open.
All the way till 12 o'clock? Because
Yeah,
they're serving the beer and wine?
Entertainment is supplemental to the operation. It's not the primary use, the way it's defined in the conditional use permit. Our concern has been for venues of this type that they don't turn into nightclub-type operations and
Right, that was my
those-
concern.
And that,
Yes.
and that has been resolved in the staff report and in the conditions of approval. So,
Okay. Thank you very much for
if
your
it
time.
turns into a nightclub, we have resources to deal with those issues.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Any other speakers? No? All right. Anything further from members? So without objection, public hearing is closed. Let's consider a motion.
I move to adopt resolution number 17-18, approving conditional use permit number 17-02.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All right. Anything further? Please vote. Me.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next item. This is a public hearing on conditional use permit number 17-06. Public hearing's open on this item. We do have speakers. May we have staff report, please? And we don't have that. No, we
Chair
have
Wilson, Commissioners, the applicant is proposing to construct a self-storage facility built in two phases consisting up to 154,550 square feet within 5 buildings. At the very western property line, a planter will run the length of the interior adjacent to the residential subdivision perimeter wall. Trees will be planted in the planter to provide a visual and physical buffer between the wall and the property. This combined with the 26-foot drive aisle between the planter and the storage buildings, plus the low-intensity nature of the use, should provide adequate separation from the use and the residences. Staff is recommending approval of the storage facility based upon the overall compatibility of the use with the surrounding area and the lack of adverse effects on nearby residential and commercial uses. That concludes staff presentation. Staff is available for any questions.
Thank you. There may be some.
There's a letter, they had brought up some ideas,
It's
concerns.
interesting, however, that's from a concerned citizen.
I don't know who that is.
I have no idea who that is. It could have been Wonder Woman, for all I know. I mean, you know, if folks have a concern, they ought to say who they are, or at least come visit with us. Anyway, I'm sorry, Mr. Hall, go ahead.
There was a couple of things. They asked to plant more mature or larger trees along the westerly line of the project. I remember when East Side School was being built, they planted the field and put in all of the trees before the school even started. So when the school was finished, the trees were and the grass were ready for the students. Is that something that can be looked at or helped with this developer, or is it just not possible?
When we look at the landscape plan, we can work with the developer in terms of asking for larger size plants and trees. We usually ask for evergreen trees every 30 feet or whatnot, but we can ask maybe for larger plants to begin with when they get planted in there. We'd ask the applicant to see.
And then the concerned citizen also brought up about some sort of a decorative wall on J13. Can you explain what the wall's going to be there now? Will it cover up the...
It's going to be a wrought iron fence there, and there's going to be I think it's 10 foot of landscaping in front of that. So within so many years that you really won't be able to see that. It'll be covered with landscaping and hedges.
Will it be a half wrought iron and half masonry, or will it be all wrought iron from top to bottom?
I believe there might be a few blocks on the bottom and then wrought iron. I have to look at it again.
That's all I have.
There was no,
Thank you.
I think there was an exhibit on that south wall, if I recall. No, it's not popping. It's not popping up. That's the north.
So J13, the J13 would be the south elevation, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That's got a building and stuff there covering it.
I think those elevations are mismarked. That's J8, I think.
There we go.
There you go. There you go.
That is just a solid wrought iron fence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
They think it's a mason wall. They think it's a mason wall. The concern citizen.
Tube steel or masonry, it's about the same price per lineal foot.
The applicant is here if you wanted to ask him to.
Move on. Anything further from anybody else? Nope, okay. We hear from the applicant. Mr. DeBlau, is it?
Yes, Dwayne DeBlau, the applicant.
I said that right.
Yeah, you did.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners.
You've done these kinds of projects before.
Yes, we have across the street. We've been in the community 15 years, as well as in Rosamond. And I'm here tonight with my brother Dale in the back, and then we also have Barry Munns from Antelope Valley Engineering to answer questions. So
we'll let that pass.
If you'll let him. I just wanted to share that architecturally, we did not try to just go through and check off the boxes on this project. We really feel a sense of pride in the community and what we're trying to put together, and we just kind of went straight out with something that we felt really looked good, enhances, the buildings that are around it, and also be an enhancement to the neighborhoods that are nearby as well. We felt very strongly about making sure it's a complete project and that there's good screening. We wanted to be sensitive to the residential portion, and obviously the nature of this type of project, we feel, which you already read in your staff report, does lend itself to a very soft use on that type of commercial property to be adjacent to a residential area. Staff did a great job on the report. They answered a lot of the stuff I would say tonight, so I felt like they did a really thorough job on this. And when it comes to the south wall that you saw on J13, we did go back and forth about whether we should do masonry as a half wall with wrought iron on top. The only problem with that is we just felt like it's an invite to climb over the fence. So we asked for permission to go ahead with the wrought iron, and we would just work really heavy on landscaping for that area. In addition, there's some masonry block that is going to be put up further in on the project as a screen wall for the use of the vacant portion of the property, just as more screening before buildings go in there and so forth. So we did address that visual aspect of it with not only the wrought iron and the landscaping, but also a screen wall.
That would be my concern too on the half wall. It just gives anyone an opportunity to scale the 4 foot above or whatever, as opposed to an 8 foot.
Right.
Tube steel.
Tube steel.
I did have a question for him.
Go ahead.
You said that it was a complete project, and in the staff report, it talks about it being built in 2 phases.
Correct.
And so when would the second phase be started? And what would be your mitigating factors to keep you from starting it and ask for an extension?
Economically, you can always hit, we've all been through that the last 10 years, so we know that, economic pitfalls can occur in real estate. Our goal is to get this project built out, and as occupancy fills up over the next 2 years, then we would like to proceed with the next phase. But you can go out further in time. In this particular resolution, I did notice that it's not just 2 years as as a CUP from the day that the permit starts. It's basically from the time that the approval has occurred. So, we're having to hurry to even get building plans turned in when most consultants are pretty buried right now. So there's already going to be a good 12 months before this project is, in its first phase completed. So we could possibly be back there, but I'm not. The way we understand the CUP to read, a phase 1 and a phase 2, once you've started on your phase 1, that is a project that consists of project approval. So if there's some clarification on that, somebody needs to make, then that's what we would ask for.
In our agenda review, we were discussing what you would do with that property, and you said that it would have an A-base put down to control the dust, and you would park outside storage types of vehicles on it.
Right.
The concern that seemed to be expressed, concern to me, is that it wasn't a permanent type of paving.
Correct. It's not a permanent type of paving, and we don't intend for that to be our permanent use. The more economic incentive, even for us, is to either do covered vehicle storage, whether it be RV or vehicles, or to do buildings. So the ultimate build-out goal is to actually have more improvement. It's on an interim basis, and for that reason, because the economy could take a dip and you have to take a little time to get your place to fill up, you have to have those sort of interim uses. But as storage operators, we are also very conscious about we don't want this to be a junkyard, and we are not interested in those type of storage devices. There are plenty of vacant pieces of land that you probably know of more than we do that get that type of product, and we usually turn those type of things down because they're difficult to get rid of as well. So,
thank you.
That was actually going to be my question relative to the RV parking. I know that would probably be to the detriment of the neighborhood if a lot of broken down, if you will, on blocks, RVs. So I would assume that there's a plan in place in order to avoid that as far as those using that storage facility?
We do. It's discretionary with our manager operators, and so if it looks like this vehicle is just a collector that's just going to be sitting there, we have a policy where we turn those down. We don't want blue tarps out there. We don't want this place. This will actually hurt our relationship with the community, and we feel that it also hurts our business plan and our operation, so.
So you have something, a robust policy, if you will, that says these, based on these guidelines, certain vehicles are allowed to be in that area?
We don't have a written policy,
Okay.
but based on our years of experience in dealing with stuff in other locations, when we see something that looks run down,
So it's subjective?
it's subjective, and it's based on our communication with our management to make sure that we don't allow that. And if somebody does complain, we're certainly happy to, take a complaint on that and deal with that accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Your current facilities that you operate in the community, trying to recall if you have outside storage in those. I don't think you do you?
I think we have a few spaces across the street, about 4. but
Yeah,
that's
not to the preponderance as proposed could be cited here.
correct. Correct. It's a concern of ours that we do not have something that is going to look trashy. And, I mean, it's basically with this architecture, that just doesn't fit our style, so.
What's the color palette look like on this?
Well, I did bring a color rendering. I mean, as you can see, that's our color palette, but it's the basic masonry, split face masonry, which is your darker color. The other tan masonry is a smooth concrete block, but that's also a color. So there's no gray block at all. So.
There's nothing wrong with gray as an accent.
Yeah.
And the metal roof, standing seam type roof. And
Correct.
And so the color palette is desert colors and a shade of blue.
Correct.
So your first phase is on the eastern side of the property.
That's right. In order to create your perimeter wall, we just need to go all the way down. So that'll, for the most part, fully enclose this quarter-mile long property.
It's an interesting piece of property.
It was a tough one to do anything with, I think, so it seemed like it fit this type
Tough
of use.
owners too, never mind. At any rate. Well, I mean, it is zone commercial, so this is a relatively benign use compared to other commercial uses that could be cited on that site. Pretty quiet. Once it's developed and occupied. Anything further from anyone? All right, thank you. Do we have any other speakers? We do, okay.
Yes, we do have one additional speaker, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Gerald Coate or Cote, I don't know which.
Is it Mr. Coate?
Mr. Cote.
Mr. Cote, welcome.
Thank you. It's my first time here. Please forgive me if I'm doing something wrong.
Oh, you can just relax.
All right. Well, I'm here to oppose this because this will be in my backyard. And as the previous speaker had stated, he owns, or there is a storage facility within walking distance of where they want this one. And then there's another one also on J8 across 20th Street. I just think there's too many storage units in the area. And as a resident, I'd like to see something else.
Well, the interesting thing, Mr. Cote, is that this commission doesn't tell folks how they develop their property.
I understand.
They have the ability to develop within the zoning regulations as they are written. And this use is a use that's allowed with a conditional use permit. The benefit of a conditional use permit is that we have the opportunity to leverage, if you will, our will to some extent upon the developer to bring us a nice project.
I understand.
But I hear your concerns. I drove your neighborhood a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, and it is a very nice neighborhood. It appears to be, for the most part, all single-family owner-occupied dwellings. Very, very nice. Very nice neighborhood. And I would suggest that if there's ever any issues, the owner of this project is your next-door neighbor. He'll be very responsive to your concerns.
I just wanted to voice my opinion. Thank you.
All right, do we have any other speakers?
No other speaker cards, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So without objection, we'll close the public hearing and consider a motion.
I move to adopt resolution number 17-19, approving conditional use permit number 17-06.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Anything further? Please vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
And thank you. Item number 8, we're going to take a 5-minute break on this one because we had received a number of pieces of correspondence that we just received tonight and haven't had a chance to review them prior to this hearing. So we're going to take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back and take up item number 8. All right, we ready? Bless you. Ms. Swain, are you okay? Okay. All right. Okay, we're back in session on item number 8, which is a new public hearing on conditional use permit number 1603. The public hearing is open on this. I had asked that the commission be provided with, since we've had a number of mini-marts before us in the last few months, copies of our ordinance 1742-050 and 1742-060, which are the ordinances that we're required to review and make findings relative to any applications for mini-marts in the community, whether they sell alcoholic beverages or not. I'm sure we have speakers on this item tonight. We have a staff report, please.
I have before you tonight conditional use permit number 16-03, which is a request to construct a 2,400 square foot 7-Eleven, 2 gas island canopies totaling 3,420 square feet, a 1,150 square foot car wash, and to allow the sale of beer and wine for off-site consumption, and to approve a waiver from distance requirements.
The waiver is for distance between other alcohol beverage uses only?
And sensitive uses.
And
other sensitive uses.
And other sensitive uses, for instance?
Residential, churches, schools.
And in this particular case?
In this particular case, we do have another establishment across the street with the same type of license. And in your staff report, it does talk about a residence to the south. However, today we did some more investigation in terms of the measurement from the distance from the property line to the residence to the south, and it is actually over 300 feet. So we want to make that correction.
All right, very good. Thank you. Go ahead.
Staff has consulted with the Lancaster Sheriff's Station regarding this project, and they did not have any concerns with this request as long as the applicant agrees to the conditions. Based on the information provided by the Lancaster Sheriff's Station, staff does not anticipate the issuance of an ABC license at this location would adversely affect the nearby residents and facilities primarily devoted to use by children, families, and the general public. According to the applicant, 7-Eleven stores are a nationally recognized franchise that requires both 24-hour operation and the sale of limited beer and wine. Without the participation of the 7-Eleven Corporation, the economic viability of the proposed development would be in doubt. The 24-hour daily operation of a 7-Eleven food store would help serve the needs of the early morning commuters as well as residents working non-traditional hours in creating a convenient retail food and gasoline station. With the redevelopment of a debilitated property, the proposed commercial development will have a fresh and modern architectural appeal with new well-maintained landscaping, associated parking, and lighting. The request is a dramatic improvement to the adjacent and surrounding uses, and the proposed commercial development will enhance the aesthetics of the streetscape. The commercial development would promote economic development in an area by developing an abandoned site. And as I just mentioned, the nearest sensitive use is the other primary alcohol beverage establishment located approximately 60 feet to the west. Because the sensitive use is located within the 500 minimum foot separation requirement of the Lancaster Municipal Code, the approval of the conditional use permit would require a waiver from this requirement. The waiver requires that two findings be made. First, that the alcohol beverage establishment will serve a specific community need, and second, that the distance waiver approved for the alcohol beverage establishment is not expected to result in an adverse effect on adjacent property uses or residences. The 7-Eleven gas station car wash would be open 24 hours a day. Sales of alcohol beverages would be permitted between the hours of 8 a.m. and 11 p.m., 7 days a week. According to the floor plan, 3 coolers totaling 17.45 square feet will be designated for beer and wine sales. The amount of square footage the applicant is proposing amounts to 0.007% of total gross floor area. The operator has agreed to limit the display of alcohol to a maximum of 1% of sales floor area. With the redevelopment of the debilitated property, the proposed commercial development will have a, excuse me. Staff is recommending approval of the proposed project because the Lancaster Sheriff's Department is supportive of the project. The project will remove a blighted site with new services and amenities for the surrounding neighborhood and the Avenue I corridor. That concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available for any questions.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious, there's apparently a 7-Eleven like, half a mile down the road or... I'm sorry, my mic's not on. There's currently a 7-Eleven on Avenue I near Division. Is that going to remain, or is that something that...
Don't know.
Pretty close to have 2 7-Elevens within... I don't know if anyone has an answer who's speaking in the...
Well, we'll ask him when they show up.
He's got his hand up, yeah. I guess when he speaks, I can ask him that question.
You can ask him anything you want.
What's happening to the 7-Eleven on Division?
Just very briefly.
Just a moment, please. We'll call on you when we're ready.
Sure.
Thanks. So, any other questions you want him to respond to right now? Go ahead.
Chris, you were saying that you guys went out and remeasured again and that it's over 300 feet. Give me the exact measurement you remeasured.
It's approximately 312 feet. So what I had added before, whether there was additional properties, if we go back to the aerial, probably easier to explain it. So just to the south of the vacant lot, there's some landscaping along Gilly Way, and then the property, the residential to the south there. I was including that landscape strip. There's 2 parcels there that are actually owned by the city, and I thought that was part of the residential property to the south.
So it's 312 feet.
Right. Once we subtracted that amount, it is over 300 feet, approximately 312 feet.
And our regulation is
300.
PL, right?
I'm sorry?
Property line to property line.
Property line to property line.
And are there any other sensitive uses adjacent to this? homeless shelters, mental health, churches, anything close, very close in proximity?
Well, there is, I believe it's Grace Resources on Sierra Highway, right to the south of here. I'm not sure how many feet, but it's not too far away.
Down there in the bottom right-hand corner.
You're welcome.
It's also the mental health facility, too.
Correct, on the west side of Sierra Highway in Jackman.
And there's also a hangout for a whole lot of vagrants and other people on the north end of the little strip center to the west of the project. In a nice little shady area up there where they tend to hang out and drink their, what's the brand? Old English 880. And what's the other one?
Why are you looking at
Well, actually, I was looking at the assistant city attorney, but she wouldn't flinch, so it was, you flinch first. Anyway, okay. You focused a lot on, Christopher, you focused a lot on the mini-mart portion and the alcohol beverage portion. However, that's a small amount of space relative to the entire facility being proposed here tonight.
Right. Yeah, roughly 17 square feet.
Of a drive-through car wash, the mini-mart itself, 2,500 square feet, dispensing of motor fuel as well as diesel fuel on a separate island.
Correct.
Right? Plus site improvements.
Yes.
And the cleanup of
the
an environmentally
rebuilding the landscaping, the sidewalk and the landscaping.
So if somebody wanted to spend $4 or $5 million, they could do it right here for that, for this project as proposed.
Correct.
Okay. But keep it in perspective, what we're talking about here tonight.
Right, it's just a minor part of the business in terms of the alcohol sales.
However, it is a mini-mart, and a mini-mart requires a conditional use permit whether they sell alcoholic beverages or not.
Yes.
It's not a convenience store, it's a mini-mart by definition of our code.
Yes.
Let's talk about the environmental issues, Ms. Swain. Can we?
Of course.
Tell us about what these folks are up against in our community.
So previous uses on the project site involved previous gas stations, auto repair facilities, and associated sumps, underground storage tanks, those types of issues. A good portion of them have been removed. Not all of them have been removed, but those past uses generated some contamination of the soil in that immediate area. So what the applicant is going to have to do is to remove the tanks that haven't been removed, remove previous auto repair equipment that may have been installed in that area. That all needs to be removed. And then they're also going to have to clean up the soil to the standards established by the regional board.
So what happens if the contamination extends down gradient into the adjacencies?
Then the cleanup takes a lot longer and is a lot more expensive. But all of that has to be cleaned up to a level established by law for the rebuild of commercial uses on that site. And that is under the oversight of the Regional Water Quality Control Board.
So the USTs that were removed, how long ago were those removed? You know?
I believe gas station uses were on the site starting in the 1950s, moving forward. So there's no real record showing when those tanks were removed.
So it's likely the underground storage tanks that were removed were not removed and the site was not cleaned to the current standard. Very likely.
Depending on when the tank was removed, yes, you would be accurate.
Right.
So if the tanks were removed in the 1950s, the standards were different than the standards are today.
However, the conditions of approval and the requirements of any development, whether it was this or
a restaurant or a shopping
Church
center or a residential development, they would be required to clean up to the standards established for that use.
So there's nothing unique in the environmental cleanup requirements.
No. So the only difference would be is if this was a residentially zoned site, the cleanup standards are stricter if you're putting residences on top. But for commercial or industrial uses, the standards are the same, regardless of whether you were putting in a shopping center, a mini mart and gas station, a restaurant. Makes no difference.
Testing my memory, as I recall, I think it was a Richfield marketer here in the pre-dawn age.
Okay, that predates me.
As I recall, but I'm testing my memory. And it's been a auto repair and auto sales, used car sales, auto sales facility off and on for a lot of years. Okay. Anything else you want to tell us about the environmental issues?
The only other environmental issues associated with the site are the demolition of the existing buildings. They need to do testing to make sure there's no lead-based paint or asbestos. If it's present, then they need to remove it in accordance with existing standards.
And who monitors that?
The Air District does and city staff does. So they have to turn in a report with their demo permit showing that either this stuff is present or not present. If it is present, it needs to be removed by someone who's qualified to do abatement, and there's procedures for that.
So if they hired Viking Demolition for a name, just pull that out of the air. Who would come out then and do a field review and make a determination that an assessment need to take place to determine.
So they have mitigation measures attached where they actually have to have somebody go in and do testing that's going to determine whether or not those substances are present. And these are people who actually know what they're looking for. And that report showing the results is submittable to the city.
And then engineering monitors that activity prior to issuing the demolition permit to make sure the site.
Correct. So they would have to get an abatement permit.
Routine stuff. Sort of. Okay. Shall we talk about the other sensitive uses before we hear from the applicant, or shall we hear from the applicant first? What would you like to do, folks?
I want to hear about the other sensitive uses first.
You want to hear about it? All right. Mr. Diorico, can you help us with the sensitive uses that you provided an exhibit for us, which was in the staff report and in the action item, proposed action item tonight, as requested by some of the members?
Right. I would say, and in reading some of the comments on some of the letters that were provided, there's an impression that that specific area, other than what you've already described on some issues we have with some homeless folks that have resided in the area behind the old Honda shop, in that area there. The impact for me, looking at it from a standard of quality living that we deal with a lot from the public safety aspect. Yes, as we have discussions ongoing as it relates to alcohol use, I think in this particular case, it's my opinion based on the quality of what the project is and what it will do based on the direction the city's going through the entire Avenue I corridor. This is an asset, and that's just purely my opinion. Based on as far as the impact for access to alcohol, yes, that's always a concern. I mean, it's absolutely been a concern of this commission and the city council as well. That's always a discussion ongoing. The reality of it is there's other things that weigh into this particular project, not just being standalone just for alcohol sales. The car wash aspect of it. And that corner, quite frankly, from the time I went to school in the 70s, it's been degraded and an issue for that entire time that I remember going through that area. So I have talked to some business people adjacent there, like at the recycling center and things, that the motorcycle shop, things like that. They like the idea of this project aesthetically as what it brings to the area and the standard.
Very good. Any questions? Go ahead.
Can I change my question to who it's?
You can say your
I'd
question
like to
forever.
address this question to city staff, perhaps to Brian. Is there any consideration at some point that city staff will provide or do some sort of research, data analytics on the waivers that we continue to approve? So that either says one of two things, that there's a need to go back and look at what we have from a compliance perspective, what the ordinances are, and perhaps, make some changes, adjust, or we really need to start taking a deeper look at what we're approving, because what I sometimes feel as though we're being not as fair to other applicants when we don't approve some of these waivers. Is there anything that's out there, any data analytics that we can at some point be provided on what we've approved and there's waivers on versus what we've not, and just maybe take another look at what we've got in place?
We can certainly go back and look at how many situations have been in front of you where there have been waivers requested and the number of waivers that have been granted. You're correct in the sense that the separation distance issue, which is the basis of what your question really goes to, when the ordinance was adopted in 2008, I believe, there were distance requirements adopted as a part of it. And the intent of that, obviously, was to create some understanding of, okay, we're going to look more closely if there are certain kinds of uses nearby to certain kinds of alcohol uses. And I want to reiterate that, because certain alcohol sellers, particularly restaurants, have no separation distance to them. Others, I believe grocery stores may not have one, if I recall correctly. So there are certain types of sellers, both on and off site in the code, that have a distance requirement, and others that don't. The ability to grant waivers is really something that is what I consider to be the proper way you write an ordinance. It's kind of a relief valve, if you will. It recognizes that you can't foresee every possible situation, going forward when you write the ordinance. So it sounds like what you're really trying to get to is, number one, is there a need for some or all of the distance requirements that exist in the code? And if not, should we reconsider how the code is drafted? And then, related to that, some concern that I sense about whether or not the commission is being consistent in the way that it reviews and grants waivers where it's granting them, if I'm understanding what you're saying.
Absolutely articulated exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Well, what we can do as a start is we can easily go back and look at all of the situations where we've had waivers requested and whether they've been granted or denied, and do some research on that in terms of numbers and bring that back to you at a future time.
Because I'm concerned that we are not being consistent when we get certain issues that come before us. I don't want to tell one applicant no 1 month and then a different applicant yes, and sometimes quite possibly it could be for the same reasons, that we're turning one down and saying yes to the other. So I think we need to really take a really good look at that, just to make sure we're being fair.
I'll speak in my case. As far as the consistency, I think it's difficult sometimes to be consistent just based on the location of the project, or looking into what else it offers. So is it really addressing a need in that area? Is it, what are the sensitive uses near that project? So for me, I have voted yes on some, and I have voted no on others, just based on the bigger picture, not just the distance requirements. So I think I think it can get a little difficult. There are some gray areas once you start considering all the factors. So,
But I'm just looking over the last few years, since maybe perhaps 2008, just perhaps some data analytics that tells a story.
Yeah.
It
I
slices
agree
it
with
different
that. That
directions.
can't hurt.
Are you doing that as it relates to impact on the area? Is that what we're discussing?
I just want to see what waivers that what we've done, what we voted, what's gone through, what were those waivers, what did it, I just want to see the analytics on it.
Perhaps the reasons.
Yeah.
Why we.
I totally support that because I think we need to be transparent up here. I think we need to be objective. We need to be fair. We need to keep personal feelings out of it, and we need to follow our guidelines. And it is what it is.
Well, the ordinance is pretty clear, and I mean, the ordinance has an objective to it. However, the decisions we make in a lot of cases are subjective. I mean, if you look at the findings you're obliged to make, we, all of us, and the decision on that, supported by 10 factors that we're obliged to consider. Sometimes we talk about all of them, sometimes we talk about a few of them, sometimes we talk about none of them. It just depends on how the case is presented, I think, and how the applicant either presents it or staff presents it or a combination thereof. We've been doing this a while. But I hear your concerns, and I have some of the same concern. Having been affiliated with international companies who have, quote, the magic word programs to establish franchise operations, or what they are. However, we still are obliged to make the discretionary findings within the ordinance as written. We don't create the ordinance, we administer it. So unless and until we decide collectively on our own motion to bring that ordinance before us for reconsideration and recommendation of changes to the city council, and the city council decides that they want to make those changes or otherwise, we're stuck with what we got. So objective and subjective.
Just show me the data. If that's,
Yep.
please.
Is that going to be a problem to gin that up?
We have really efficient staff.
Not tomorrow, doesn't have to be, may I?
No, I know who it could be. Tim is not here. He left. That sounds like a good assignment for Tim.
Yes, that's a very data-driven person. Yes.
You should have stayed to protest.
On this project here, I'm excited to have the new development. I think that it's long overdue. It's going to cure some environmental issues that we have there. It's my biggest issue is the 1742-060. I have to disclose to my fellow commissioners that I was contacted by Jeff Little on this project, and I wanted to, I pointed out these conditions, and this is how I make my decisions. He also wanted to deliver me a packet, and I suggested he deliver it to City Hall, and I'm not sure if it ever made it or not. The programs that these corporate entities bring up, we do have these factors, these 10 different factors, and there is one of them that talks about in here pretty specifically that says, I think it's B here, it says, the extent to which alcohol sales are related to the function of the proposed use and the possibility of the use operating in a viable manner without alcohol sales. 1742-060, that's B. we were told that it's only .007 square feet, or a percentage of their square footage, .007, or less than 1% of the total square footage of a gas station, a mini market, and a car wash. And it seems to me like if only that little bit of the floor space is going to make or break all the rest of that, that there's probably some re-examination that we either need to do with the municipal code, or the corporations need to understand that we have these codes. I'm not sure how to handle it. Maybe Commissioner Harvey is correct. We need to have some analytics to understand it. In the meantime, I feel like I have my hands tied by these conditions. We are a part of the, we are constituted by municipal code. It's section 224-020. It's we are vested with the duty of making decisions on conditional use permits, tentative tract parcel maps. So we are codified to do this, to make sure we make decisions. And I'm not sure analytics are going to make or break this particular one. I have asked staff, specifically Brian Ludicky, why city staff recommends these to us, because that is the recommended action. And he came up with some pretty good reasons. Mr. Dorico says that the area will improve, and I have no doubt that it will with that 7-Eleven there. Just to add some levity, one of our letters said that the market will sell booze to local vagrants, hookers, pimps, gangsters, and alcoholics on the streets here. I had to highlight it because I think that is a perception that a lot of people have with alcohol, and it's one of the reasons why 1742-060 was developed. And regardless of whether or not we can have contingencies for everything, right now we have some pretty tough things to overcome in these 10 units. I step off my soapbox now.
Thank you. Mr. DeRico, in the staff report, it talks about the oversaturation comment by ABC, that by adding this, it would be for retailers of alcoholic beverages when the, whatever the zone is called, stipulates only 2. Can you share with us what that means?
What ABC does is they take crime data as it relates to reporting districts, and then they take it as an average over the entire region area that particular ABC office has in jurisdiction. So they develop on what an average is for per reporting district over the entire area that they supervise. The issue being is that that's not really an indicator of anything other than they make a determinate average based on that, and they determine a number above that creates it and creates a high crime density number. And that's where they come up with that saturation issue. And as we've talked about in the past, it's probably a good idea for maybe we bring Agent Duran here or someone to explain to you the entire process that they come up with this, because the formula doesn't make sense as related. That would be like saying every reported district's exactly the same here in the city of Lancaster, which I can tell you is not even close to the truth, okay, based on even law enforcement contact. So in my evaluation, as things come forward to the commission, is truly looking at bringing that down to a certain area around that facility and that potential impact for it, and what the positive and negatives may be for that type of business. And we talk about that all the time. Ms. Corbett and I have regular meetings with certain businesses, and there's issues related to that to rectify whatever those issues may be. I can say, just as other ones that come before, and looking in the design and thing, we look at it from safety through environmental design. And a lot of these newer locations have a lot of those things considered in lighting and creating issues related to those septet issues and shrubs and not having payphones and all these certain nuisance attractions that exist in some other places that we're readily dealing with all the time. And then also the fact is the ABC thing it's just misleading. It's misleading based on how they develop that. And we're having discussions with them based on that too. Is that a true indicator on whether there's an impact at use or not based on the criteria and formula used? Because it doesn't make any sense.
But the
whatsoever.
licensing, the ability to secure a license from ABC for the proposed operation is predicated on the approval of a conditional use permit by the city.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
without that, they don't get an ABC license.
That's correct. And also, along with the Sheriff's Department evaluation and us, we're intricately involved with ABC because, quite frankly, to be honest with you, with the limited resources that ABC has to enforce the regulation, we are the enforcement body for ABC, along with our contract relationship with the Sheriff's Department. So we work with them on a daily basis as it relates to issues that happen in our community related to alcohol.
Very good. All right, thank you. All right.
Mr.
Go
DeRico,
ahead.
would you say that the census tract that they were quoting, it says that it limits it to a total of 2 off-sale licenses, is similar to what we have here, where Mr. Ludicky said that we can't cover every contingency, and that is a general guideline that census tract people come up with? But does that make sense?
I believe it's a formula that they came up with as it related, and that's the standard that they set by their approval or disapproval or potential impact of a licensee, just based on the formula that they utilize. And again, it's being addressed to be more appropriate, I think, based on specific. I think it's too general and vague. It's vague and ambiguous as it relates to this. And again, there should be some consideration. I think there's variances in everything. Okay, and I think part of what Mr. Ludicky addressed was the fact that there's the ordinance is a guideline, okay, but we have a spirit of the law versus the letter of law issue here, and what's the offsetting balance here? Okay, and if we truly believe that the sales based on the impact there is going to impact an area, then we need to address it and substantiate why we believe that. And I certainly would be, anytime that's an issue for this commission to come forward, or if I project that as my opinion, then I will substantiate my reasons for that, as I have here. But I will tell you, just even as we break it down by reporting district, that's not always an indicator, depending on the size of the reporting district. You know, we have things based on certain population density in reporting districts that were established before I worked as a patrol deputy here that no longer are viable based on the density that's in the area. For an example, is on the east side of Lancaster. Those reporting districts are large, sometimes 2 full sections of property, 1,200 acres, where that would not be appropriate in more populated density in areas based on how we establish our patrol allocations and things as well. So this is, do you see what I'm saying? This is very general, based by an average of calls for service in all reporting districts throughout the whole region as it relates to that one particular office.
All right, thank you.
But the burden of proof is not upon the commission, it's upon the applicant. We don't have to say that. I mean, like the one I pointed out on item B, we have tiny itty bitty, it was pointed out in the staff report, a sales area dedicated to alcohol. And one of the things that could wipe that out of my mind is how could they, is it going to be half of their business out of that 1%? Or is it going to be 0.002% of it? And then why would they have it if it was such a small amount?
Well, I think after all this discussion we've had in advance of hearing from the applicant, rather than at the back end of it and go through the Q&A 3 times, we've now flushed out every issue that might be brought before us by the applicant and his representative. Now, he ought to be covering supper tonight for all of us, but that would be a conflict. So when he stands up and introduces himself, he'll say, "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address your concern." So, shall we hear from the applicant? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Voss.
We've seen you before.
Yes, I believe we've had an opportunity to meet in this setting previously, and it's a pleasure to be back here again.
Let me ask you before you start.
Certainly, sir.
We had 8 letters dropped on us at the last minute here tonight.
Yes, sir.
which we took a break to read, and I hopefully the staff shared those with you. Good. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Let me introduce myself. My name is Michael Pauls. I am the applicant's representative this evening. Before I begin my presentation, Chairman Vos and members of the Planning Commission, I wanted to address a question that Commissioner Smith had, and I'd also like to have an opportunity to address an issue regarding the waiver. I thought that was a very interesting discussion, and I thank you very much for holding that discussion and bringing up all those issues and speaking so eloquently regarding some of these complicated issues that the ordinary layperson simply never has to address. First of all, I'd like to begin by apologizing to staff. It was my terrible oversight. This is not going to be a 7-Eleven. This is going to be a Circle K. Just recently...
We thought maybe you had changed employers.
Not this evening. But it will be a Circle K. Circle K is a national franchise. In our discussions with city staff, it's been made very apparent to us that the city would prefer to see a national franchise and have that third-party oversight. The Circle K Corporation, as well as the 7-Eleven Corporation, provide that oversight. They are a partner in the business. And there are also other aspects regarding Circle K or any national franchise, and that being there is an economic necessity. That these national franchises do a significant amount of advertising, which benefits, but also from an economic point of view, the national franchise, the Mobil and the Circle K, is also preferred by banking institutions. And so a banking institution would prefer to have a national franchise. It provides credibility to the business, and so you can qualify for lower interest rates. The process of being approved for a loan is a simpler process, especially given a project like this that has very, very, very extensive off-site improvements that don't specifically address the economics of the project, but address the corner, address the look of the area, the blighting of this corner, and improves the look of the entire station and corner itself. I'd also like to have an opportunity to chime in on the discussion regarding waivers. The distance criteria does make a difference, and it makes a difference from our side of the DS also. The distance criteria involves decisions that are made before we even bring an application to this commission, to the city staffs, even before submittal. So what you see in this case is you see a requirement that is made by the 7-Eleven Corporation, again, for beer and wine sales. But our position was we don't want the perception that this is 5%, 4%, 3%. We want the bare minimum, and that is to simply just check the box off to be able to go forward with the franchise and all the benefits to it. So even though that discussion is held, we stand firm and we indicate that the city does have this ordinance in place. We want to be respectful of this ordinance, and we want to go forward, and we want to provide the least amount of impact as we possibly can. Again, there will only be cooler space. There will not be any floor space or shelf space. There won't be any distilled spirits. This is to get our foot in the door, so to speak. And so the waiver process does have an impact on us on this side of the DS or the counter, depending upon where we are. Again, let me take an opportunity prior to beginning the presentation to thank staff, Chris Ani, Mr. Brian Ludicky, as well as several other staff members. Chung Eng was actually very instrumental with respect to this project while he was still with the city. And I can tell you with all the certainty in the world that those planners challenging us and trying to make a project better, working with the architect, taking that extra time and effort to make a project a better project, it does indeed make a project better. And this is an example of that. I'd like to begin by introducing the applicant. The applicant is Tim Hedaya. Mr. Hedaya has been a resident of the city of Lancaster for over almost 30 years now. He's a resident of Lancaster. He operates his business in the city of Lancaster. But more importantly than that, this is a gentleman that believes in Lancaster. He believes in Lancaster. He's investing in Lancaster and the future of Lancaster. And those investments are creating businesses in the community. And by creating businesses in the community, also creating jobs in the community. And improving derelict corners such as this, which have been derelict for far too many years. A brief history of the site, which was so eloquently covered by staff. The site has been a gasoline service station, and I was amazed to read this, from 1923 to 1979. 2 service stations operated at the site. 1923, this must have been one of the original gasoline service stations in Southern California. I dealt with an example that was built in 1937. This predates it. I didn't even know they had gasoline service stations in 1923 before reading this. So the site has been a gasoline service station. It's currently a used car lot and an automotive repair facility. It basically is a group of derelict businesses. Derelict buildings. I don't mean to speak poorly of the businesses, and an eyesore and blight on the community, which has been clearly stated this evening. Again, the site is contaminated, and as a result of this development, is going to be remediated at considerable cost. But the switch was triggered as a result of this development, the sale of the property and the investment. The property has already, there have been a phase 1, phase 2 conducted on the site for subsurface pollutants. I believe there are no large tanks on the site. There is a small, I believe it is an oil tank on the site, which will be remediated. And it's our understanding that the site will potentially be remediated, and that there has not been any of the pollutants which have migrated off-site. And I do apologize for my voice. It always happens when the hot weather comes into play and air-conditioned environments become my reality. So going from one to another, my voice becomes somewhat hoarse. The proposed project, which has already been addressed by this Planning Commission, is breaking ground on the north side of I Street. If you would look up and down I Street, on the northern side of I Street, you don't see a lot of new development. You don't see a lot of investment. This would be one of the most substantial investments north of I Street, outside of the hospital facility, the medical facility, which is approximately a mile to the east of this project on I Street. What we are proposing is, well, we're going to be demolishing the entire site, so we're not leaving anything on the site. What we're proposing is a 1,150 square foot automatic car wash. This automatic car wash meets or exceeds all the state standards with respect to recycling of water. It's my understanding that the car wash recycles over 80% of the new water that comes into the system. So from an environmental and a drought perspective, this is something that is incredibly beneficial for the community. And that's relative to individuals that are washing their cars in their driveways. If an individual washes his car in the driveway, he's using anywhere from 100 to 150 gallons of water. And more importantly, all of that road grime, all that brake dust, all of that pollution on the car flows into the gutter, from the gutter. It flows into the storm drain system and on and out. So it is an unregulated pollutant. This car wash actually does regulate by filtering and cleaning the water. And I'd also like to add that automatic car washes are an underrepresented use in the area and a convenience to the surrounding community. We are also constructing a 2,400 square foot food store. I'd like to point out that staff had a great deal of input. Originally, we were going to apply adaptive reuse to an existing building. And that building, we were going to put the convenience mart into the building. We were going to take the shell of the building and rebuild it. Staff had indicated to us, as well as our architect, Mr. Andrew Pasterko, and indicated that really the best means of going forward is to raise the building entirely and to build a new building. A building that's set back from the property line, allows a continuous landscaping strip at the cost of several $100,000 to the property owner. And I can tell you that Tim Hedaya was in agreement with that. He takes a great deal of pride in this community and wants the community to take pride in this development also. The food store will also have a wider variety. It's a mini mart according to the definition in the code, but I'd like to make reference to it as a food store. We'll have a wider variety or spectrum of products and healthy foods, a much wider variety than other mini marts in the area. It differentiates itself. The business is proposed to operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Again, that is a Circle K requirement. And what I'd like to do is I have a letter here indicating the requirements that Circle K imposes on its franchisees. And I'd like to have an opportunity to present this to staff as we speak. And I'd also like to point out that the off-site improvements, which involve street widenings, sidewalks, curb gutter, new street lights for the area, new street signals, new traffic signals, new parkway landscaping, landscaping of the medians, is also an additional cost to this project in terms of reaching $1 million, if not exceeding $1 million for the site. We're also proposing, as has been discussed, very limited beer and wine sales. The Sheriff's Department is very eloquent, has been very eloquent with respect to their statements of support for the project. Again, the allowable floor area is 5% with respect to the municipal code. We are proposing far less than that, and I won't belabor that. That's already been discussed. The beer and wine is going to be sold in multiple packs. We are consistent with the ordinance. The beer and wine is really intended for families, for commuters after a long day. That want to stop in, they want to purchase some gasoline, they want to purchase some supplementary grocery shopping, and perhaps purchase an adult beverage that they can take home, enjoy with dinner, or relax and watch the ball game. But it is really intended for those individuals, for our customers that are utilizing the services that we're providing, be it a car wash, the gasoline service station, or this food market and the supplementary grocery shopping that goes along with that. Again, beer and wine is required by the Circle K franchise. I'd like to add one more point. We will be selling 750 milliliter bottles of wine. I can assure you that the wine will only be sold with a cork in it. We're not going to have any twist-offs. There are not going to be any cheap wines, no fortified wines. There's not going to be any Old English 800 there either.
880.
880. I've promised this commission and we stand by this. There will never be any distilled spirits sold at this site. There's not going to be at a time in the future that we're going to come back and try to make an argument for distilled spirits, because this is intended for individuals that are coming to purchase a bottle of wine, purchase a multiple pack of a beer beverage, and then go home. This is not going to be a store that sells distilled spirits. The hours of sale will be from 8 o'clock in the morning until 11 p.m. The state of California permits 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. Again, that does not coincide with our customer base, with the projections. This is fully intended for those individuals that are commuting, families that live in the area. We want this to be family friendly. With respect to the distance criteria, I thank Chrisani with respect to making that clarification regarding residential. But with respect to the mini market, Bob's 2, which is across the roadway, our operation is completely different. Again, there is a much wider spectrum of goods, much fresher foods, fruit, healthier drinks, healthier foods all around. There's a greater assortment of services on the site. And so there is no duplication of services in this immediate area with respect to our proposal to sell beer and wine at the site. I have been made aware that this is not a high crime area at this corner. The Lancaster Sheriff's Department has indicated that there really aren't any calls at this corner. As has been pointed out in the past, crime reporting districts are oddly shaped. And this portion is not an area that's subject to high crime. And the benefit of having a 24-hour business that's very well lit, and I'll go through the security the security that we're projecting for the site also, the various security measures. But it's very well lit, it's very secure. It's an environment that we want people to be able to go to in the middle of the night if their child has the sniffles, to be able to get some cold and flu medicine. We want to be able to provide that fresh sandwich to the individuals coming home at 3 o'clock in the morning from work, or that cup of coffee at 5 o'clock in the morning. And we want people to come into the site and take ownership of it. The police and cities can only do so much, but there is a partnership with business. Businesses, in conjunction with cities, clean up areas. It's the oversight of that business. And I can tell you that with 24-hour service, we're going to have eyes and ears on all 4 corners of this intersection, this important intersection. Therefore, we're going to be doing our part for community policing. We are going to be community policing as a result of this development. So it's not just going to improve the look of the site, it's going to improve the safety of the site and the surrounding area. And I can assure you that the shopping center across the way, where there's the Bob's 2 market, that shopping center is going to fill up. It's 3/4 empty right now. That shopping center is going to fill up because they're going to see that there's more customer traffic in this area, that there is the oversight. And the owners of those businesses in that shopping center are going to want to be proud of their businesses. And they're not going to want the wrong element hanging out, because that affects their business. So this proposal is going to have not just immediate impacts for the property, but it's going to have impacts on the surrounding properties and surrounding property owners. It's going to allow individuals, when they have a full shopping center, to be able to go to the bank and make improvements to try to improve the businesses, to try to sign better leases. With security, there will be 2 to 4 trained employees on the site at all times. There are going to be high-definition cameras with DVR images which are recorded for 60 days. And we're going to be training personnel with respect to retrieving those images. So when the Lancaster Sheriff's Department approaches us and says, you know, we had a traffic accident out here, we had you know, a jaywalker out here, and we want to pull your footage to see if you have anything for that, we're going to have someone that's going to be able to go to the machinery and be able to pull that up immediately and provide that to the Sheriff's Office. We want to work collaboratively with the Sheriff's Department and actually be that asset. We're also going to have a speaker system on the site. So if there's an individual that may be hanging out on the site, maybe trying to stay out of the sun and the shade, we're going to remind those people, without actually going outside, that we don't permit that activity on this property because we want to keep our customer base, because we want to be good stewards. We're also going to have signs throughout the property, which are going to indicate that this property is completely covered when it comes to high-definition cameras, and every action on the property is being recorded. So people know this when they come on the property. It will be a deterrent. We're also going to be providing, we're also going to be emphasizing hiring from the local community. From Antelope Valley College. We want to bring people in that need flexibility with respect to their schedules, and we want to help those individuals that don't have a resume. One thing that's often overlooked regarding franchises is the fact that an individual that doesn't have a resume can't get a job. It's very difficult because everywhere you go, you have to send your resume in. Everything's online. When I grew up, you had to bring your resume in, and I'm sure Chairman Vose also had to do the same. But today, you put it online, and they reject you outright. You don't have a resume? That's it. So what we do is we hire people without resumes. We give them the opportunity to create a resume with a national franchise. That national franchise, as well as the local owner, pays for training for those individuals. So on the next job that they wish, if in fact they don't stay with the company and then move up through the ranks and become a regional manager and so on, for the next job those individuals have, they have a resume, they have a background, they have a track record. It gives them an opportunity. Those individuals that can't afford college or choose not to go forward with college or even perhaps don't have a high school education, can go forward and can eventually become, work for the corporation itself. As I mentioned before, the intention of this business is to be a clean, well-run family business, family-friendly, beneficial to the surrounding community. And I'd also like to have the opportunity to point out that there are a number of businesses and facilities in the area that are going to benefit from this. Certainly the medical center, which is right down the road. And I stopped by this medical center, and it is world-class. I walk in there, I think Mayo Clinic, except for one item that disappointed me about your medical center. Its cafeteria closes at 4 o'clock. So anybody that wants to purchase a sandwich, or they want to get a soft drink, or they want to get an iced tea, they have to go off-site. And in speaking to some of the nurses and asking them where they kind of go, and I asked them, well, do you go over to the 7-Eleven? No, we really don't prefer to go to the 7-Eleven. We bring our own, or we drive further down I Street and somebody will bring everything back. And I had mentioned and shown some of these renderings, and they said, yeah, that's someone we'll go. We'll go there. They recognized Tim Hidaya's name, and they said, certainly. You know, this gentleman is a pillar of the community. He's going to run a good business. We're going to get in our car. We're going to drive down there. We'll get a good break from the hospital in the middle of the night. We're also within proximity of the 24-hour Lancaster Sheriff's Station, and I'm sure that our 24-hour coffee is going to be is going to be popular with the Sheriff's Department. We're also, again, as I mentioned, a convenience to motorists and commuters, especially those individuals that are traveling into the valley every single day, driving back, spending an hour on the road. With this service, they're going to be able to take care of their gasoline needs, do their supplementary grocery shopping. Each additional stop that they make outside, if they were to get gas and let's say they wanted to pick up a bottle of wine, their wife wanted them to pick up a bottle of wine, requires an additional 10 minutes, and that's 10 minutes away from their family. So whereas it's difficult to ascertain what a convenience is, this is convenient for those individuals. And additionally, there's also the Metro Rail. So those individuals that are traveling even further to downtown Los Angeles and further on a daily basis have this available to them a couple blocks up from the Metro Rail station. And in closing, I'd like to indicate, I'd like to highlight again. I read through these letters, and they're very heartfelt. I'm hoping these are not customers of Bob's Two Market, and Bob did not implore them to send these in, but I can tell you that, again, it's not just the city. It's not just having patrol cars in the area. It's not just the city expending resources on an area that improves crime, that drives people out, that reminds them of what they're not supposed to do. It's also responsible businesses. And this is going to be, we promise you, is going to be a responsible business. It's going to be a responsible business. It's going to take the privilege of selling beer and wine to our customers very seriously. We're going to be locking doors after hours. We're going to be training our employees to make sure that they take that responsibility personally. And this is going, and I promise, this is going to be a well-run business. With that, I'd like to make myself available for any comments that this commission may have. And thank you very much for your time, and apologize for my long-windedness this evening.
Thank you very much for your comments. Can you how to phrase this? Project is presented to us with the staff report and all the elevations and all the renderings and everything in this whole package as a 7-Eleven project. The color scheme, design, layout, floor plan, all the rest of it. And you're telling us that it's now a Circle K, which sounds a whole lot like the project that you represented at 3 months ago at 20th West and J, excluding diesel fuel sales and a drive-through car wash. That be about right?
Yes, there are similarities.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I don't know about my colleagues, but I have a real challenge considering an application conceptually without documentation. I understand clearly what you're saying, but the package presented to us was a 7-Eleven franchise. Now, fine company, so Circle K, fine company. Help us out here.
And can I just piggyback on it, asking
You go right ahead.
when staff became aware that this was, I mean, we had a study session last week, and it was a 7-Eleven, and I think you could see us all visibly kind of go like that when I just casually asked the question about the 7-Eleven down the street, because it didn't make sense to me that there were two of them in such close proximity. So can anyone on staff tell me when they became aware that, because I'm looking at the staff report too, and my question was, okay, do we just pull the name 7-Eleven out of every piece of the staff report and just drop Circle K in and it's exactly the same?
I can answer that question, and it's my responsibility. It's this evening, when you heard the information, I presented the information to staff. And to be very honest with you, it's not good form. And it was an oversight of mine. It was fully my responsibility. And I did not inform staff. I can tell you that both companies are, again, they're fine companies, they're fine stewards. They have, market share, throughout the United States. Both very, very well-run companies. The reasoning, I'm not party to all of the reasoning that took place, why this became a Circle K rather than a 7-Eleven. Those internal discussions were held with 7-Eleven and with Circle K, and we didn't want to come here, and we have an agreement in place with Circle K. So we're not just throwing out a name at this point in time, but we wanted to come here with an agreement in place for the economics of the project, for the city staff, for the comments that we'd received, and we could have stood up here and said, no, I think it's going to be a 7-Eleven down the road, said, no, it's going to turn into Circle K.
If I could interrupt you, I'm sorry. I need to interrupt you.
Please.
Part of your presentation said that you spent a lot of extra time and effort, but yet this is what we got with 7-Eleven. You had to have known before the 9th hour that it was Circle K, number one. Number two, when Commissioner Smith brought up another 7-Eleven in the area, no one corrected it and said, wait, this isn't a 7-Eleven, this is a Circle K. I have lost all confidence in this project. I'm sorry, but I have. I think this is not just a little bump in the road. I feel like it's misrepresentation. That's how I feel. So I need to get that out there. Thank you.
If I may, I think because of the angle, he might, when that did come up, he raised his hand, and that's, I think, when the chairman said, we'll get to you when we go through the process. So at least in that, I don't think there's anything.
My biggest concern is that our staff didn't even know this. I mean, it's one thing, it's bad enough that we didn't know it and our reports aren't accurate, but it just, I think a lot like Commissioner Cook does, that I was just stunned, and it's, I agree. I worked at Circle K when I was younger, long time ago. 7-Eleven's great, Circle K is great, I agree with all that, but just the way that all of this was represented, and I can't answer the question if we would have ever known tonight if it was going to be a Circle K had I not asked that question about the Circle K being in proximity. Because if our staff didn't even know.
7-Eleven would be in proximity.
Yeah, I mean the 7-Eleven being in such close proximity. So.
I can assure you that is the beginning of my presentation. And that was information I was going to discuss with cities, with yourselves this evening. I was going to begin my presentation with that. Therefore, we are respectful of this commission. We don't certainly want to give the impression of being disrespectful in any way. This was entirely my doing, my fault. And I would hope that you would not place this burden on this property owner, on this gentleman that's gone to such great lengths, paid such great expenses to bring this project before you. I don't wish you to taint his reputation with my error. And I apologize to the applicant, as well as I extend my apologies for not having provided that staff. I'd like to ask the architect to, who has a great deal of experience with this.
Hang on a
to speak,
second.
if I may.
Hang on a moment.
Before, I have a question for staff, if I may. Procedurally, given that it's a different franchise than you had prepared the report for, does this create a need for you for more time or anything along those lines?
I think from staff's perspective, and to answer the question, which never got answered, we became aware of this approximately 33 minutes ago. What I don't know is because the discussion, including the amount of square footage of alcohol space, the floor plan, everything else, does that change under a Circle K? I don't know the answer to that.
We have no exhibit.
We don't have a report that.
Well, here's what I would suggest. We've spent a while on this, deliberating before the presentation to flesh out issues of our mutual concern, which, from my point of view, is a benefit both to this applicant as well as any future applicant coming before this commission relative to a mini-mart. Clearly understanding what our concerns and issues may be. I have a suggestion for us. Notwithstanding the fact that we do not have an accurate package before us to consider, we do anticipate having an application for a mini-mart, gas station, alcohol beverage sales, and drive-through car wash on this corner. And a deference to Mr. Grubel and his family, who have owned this property for a long, long time. It's pretty important to the landowner. We can do two things. We can stop the hearing right now and continue the matter to a date certain. We can adopt a motion and then deny the application because it's not a correct app. Or we can continue with our query of the issues that are important to us and then make a determination on how to proceed. So that's my idea. I don't know if somebody else has an alternate.
Your third suggestion I like, which is because many of these issues I think are going to be the same, so I'd like to continue the discussion, at least have us deliberate a little more and then determine a course.
We also have other speakers here tonight who have taken the time to be here, and I would prefer hearing from them as well. So go ahead. You want to say something?
Okay, so I'm going to be the counterpoint,
Go ahead.
Commissioner Mercer, because, Brian, you are about to make a comment. There may be, and don't let me put words in your mouth, some fundamental differences with the way the report is written and what the guidelines are based on, there may be some differences that you all are not aware of, so I don't want to put something to a vote that you all haven't looked at.
Well, my point was that the report is written based upon the marketing approach, even the square footage of the alcohol space that we understood 7-Eleven was going forward with. I do not know whether or not Circle K operates that same approach.
So, having said that, if we were to go on a recommendation that city staff puts in front of us, making a motion, it would be based on 7-Eleven as opposed to Circle K.
Well, it would be based on the information that we were provided for this process, and to take that one step further, if hypothetically you were to approve the recommendation as currently written, they would be subject to those same restrictions. And Circle K, even if they didn't normally operate that way, would have to operate within them.
Well, just to clarify, what that third suggestion was, is that we hear from the people that came here to give us information tonight and to ask the questions that we need to ask, not necessarily to vote on the approval of it tonight, but to vote on a course of action. So, but at least the people who are here.
Potentially, I don't know what motions someone would want to offer at the end of the process here. But my suggestion, and I would encourage us to hear the folks that are here tonight, so they can get their testimony on the record. Should this project, no matter what we decide to do, I think we should hear from the folks that are here tonight. And then we can decide what we want to do after that. But I think we've had, the applicants had ample opportunity to present what they choose to present. You may have an opportunity to rebut later, but we'd ask you to go ahead and sit down, and we're going to hear some more testimony. Thank you.
I have a question to clarify, if I may.
Go ahead.
Right, so what you're saying is, if the commission were to approve this, they'd be subject to everything that's in there regardless of the 7-Eleven to Circle K change. So really, the risk then would be on their part if it doesn't match up with the Circle K. So I guess the question goes, my question would be to the applicant, you're comfortable with everything that's in there presented other than 7-Eleven?
My name is Andrew Pacerco. I am the architect. Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. And I answer the question that let me have a very preamble. Okay, so can I have the rendering, please, on the screen? Is it appropriate? Yeah, for example, this is fine. This is even better. So the issue came up very surprisingly about 7-Eleven or not 7-Eleven, Circle K or not Circle K. But really, nothing is changing except if you just point to the little stripe over the window. Other than that, every single thing is identical, even the floor layout, even the merchandising equipment. Because, or I can take, instead of Mobile, I put Shell. Would it make any difference to anybody? They are major brands recognized throughout the United States. One is totally interchangeable to the other. Okay, nobody's going to come here and make a testimony that Circle K is somehow less of a franchise than 7-Eleven. Everybody may have their own personal preferences, but objectively you cannot prove it because it's the same thing. Dr. Haraya decided, for various personal reasons, to change the last minute from 7-Eleven to Circle K. But this is just a color change, okay? If I put this jacket off and put a Harris tweed, I'm still only Andy Pacerco. So the actual functioning and the actual operation and the actual money we're spending, we're putting the off-site work, the city improvements, it's all the same. Now, let me say, I do part-time preaching, so I'm going to tell you guys something, okay? And, okay, that right now is a dark corner, because I think that it's dark outside. If I turn on those lights, the darkness is going to go away. It cannot argue, okay? It cannot say, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be staying here. I'll be still dark here. It's going to be light. It's going to be an attendant 24 hours. And if anything untoward is happening, he's going to call the police. We're going to maintain a beautiful landscaping interface with the public, and all the beautiful things about the brand is that it has to stay there. It cannot disintegrate because the person loses his investment in the two franchises. Two franchises. The Mobile is a big franchise, and the Circle K is a big franchise. And you can blame us, or I don't know if there's anything to blame or not to blame. But all I'm here to say as an architect, and I've been doing this franchise business and the gas station business since 1980, that this is totally interchangeable. So please consider that.
All right, thank
you. And don't
you.
be concerned.
So basically, it was a business decision by the applicant to change change the franchise from one to the other. It was a business decision that took place at least maybe around June 7th or somewhere around there, and nobody knew about it till tonight. Thank you.
And he has personal reasons. I'm not sure if he wants to go into.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's a
Yeah,
business
I agree.
decision.
It doesn't.
It's a business decision. I got it. Business is business. What we have before us, however, is a publicly noticed hearing of an application for, defined clearly as what is presented to us tonight in writing and in testimony until the applicant spoke. So, I think we're probably, I'll ask city attorney, or assistant city attorney. But my guess is she's going to say this needs to rewind the watch, rehearing, republish, have at it.
I don't think it's appropriate to take a vote on up or down, yea or nay, with respect to this application. It's not necessarily that it's incomplete. That's not an accurate statement. It's just wrong. It's not what was noticed. It's not what was reviewed. It's not what was analyzed by staff. The recommendations might be totally different, both by Mr. Ani, by Mr. DeRico. We don't know. It's simply not appropriate to vote on it tonight.
No, I would agree. I appreciate your comments. However, I mean, is it the commission's pleasure to hear the rest of the folks who took their time to come here tonight?
I think that's only fair.
I would like to hear them.
All right, okay. Well, let's do that. Shall we hear from other speakers, please?
Yes. Paul Grubel.
Mr. Grubel. And we're in no hurry, Paul. You take your time.
Good evening.
And welcome.
As a resident of the Antelope Valley in Lancaster for 60 years, and the owner of this property for 35 years plus, I enthusiastically ask you and encourage you to approve this application. It will be a major benefit to the city and to the people in this city. The small perturbation that has just come up must be considered, but I would say that there should be a vote tonight by the entire planning people, not by a brief discussion indicating a vote is not in order. I encourage you to consider this matter. I do not see that it is a major change, and I again say, take advantage of the opportunity to improve this city big time. Thank you. I will answer any questions about the thing that I might benefit you.
Thank you, Mr. Grubel. Appreciate your comments. Another speaker, please.
Yes, Fran Sarasaris.
Welcome back, Fran.
Excuse me. Good evening again. I gotta perk up my voice a little bit now. To be honest with you, I was a little dismayed when they changed from the set. I was a little dismayed also when they showed us 7-Eleven and they put the Circle K when he spoke. But I'm also thinking on the other end of the spectrum is that corner needs, it would be a great help to the whole community in sprucing up that corner. And I would, in my opinion, I would venture to look at everything else, start and look at the paperwork all over again and make sure that everything is what it's supposed to be. If it is, I'm for it the way it was brought up. But I'm kind of, I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like if I went in the front door and then somebody just slammed it in front of me and I didn't get a chance to get out of the way. So, but that's my opinion. I would come back, and if you decide not to vote tonight, I'm with you, and you decide to vote with it, I'm with you. But that's my opinions, and I thank you for letting me share it with you.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have any other speakers?
No, we do not.
All right. So, you have an opportunity to rebut if you care to.
Certainly. I'd like to give up my time to the architect, Mr. Andrew Pasterka.
Sure.
I'm not a lawyer, but there's an attorney here.
Well, she is.
That's good.
And she is our expert. So we listen very carefully to people who have spent those years
in law school,
passing the bar.
Right.
So I would be, I do understand as a AIA member, your expertise as well.
Some law, we took some law.
However, I would caution you that we're very sensitive to following rules up here. So you go right ahead.
Okay, there's two things I'd like to say. This commission is entrusted with land use. Am I right?
Go right ahead.
Your jurisdiction or mandate is to decide over land use. So that's my question. You don't have to answer it. It could be a poetic question, just for you guys to think about. And the second is this. If we left the 7-Eleven, if we really wanted to play games, we could leave the 7-Eleven on, right? There's no law requiring you to get a permit to change your franchise, as far as I know.
But you do have the application for a conditional use permit to sell alcoholic beverages, which requires the ABC of the state of California to concur. And that application is based on a 7-Eleven franchise, not a Circle K. That's before us. Now, I'm not going to argue the point with you, but you go right ahead and say whatever else is on your mind, and then I suggest you take your seat.
But I never heard any prejudice or prejudgment. 7-Eleven.
I have none.
No, but why should we? And so as long as the physical bits and pieces, the built environment, the interior environment, the interior merchandising scheme, the doors, the Coke machine, the coolers, everything is the same, think about that. That's what you're proving. You cannot really say, I prefer 7. I don't even know if it's even legally appropriate to prefer one franchise over another unless you identify the reasons for that. So all I'm saying is that one is totally interchangeable to the other, and you are approving a certain mini market with a certain restrictions, with a certain equipment inside, with a certain look, with a certain architecture, with certain associated land use. We are not necessarily approving a 7-Eleven. That's all I have to say.
All right,
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
Chairman Bose, I'm sorry to interrupt. If I just might interject, and I don't think I expounded on it enough, quite frankly.
You're not interjecting.
We'll
be asking you some questions. You go right ahead.
We gave notice of a public hearing about a 7-Eleven. There might be, I don't know if it's reasonable or not, but there might be people out there in the community that would oppose a Circle K but would be fine with a 7-Eleven or vice versa. We have not given the proper notice for what has been swapped out at the last minute. We have not satisfied our legal notice requirements. That's why I'm saying you cannot, it's not appropriate for you to take a vote on the matter.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So we've heard from the public, we've received written correspondence opposed. We've heard from the applicant's representative. So now we have two choices, I think.
Chairman Bose, we would be in agreement, and we would request a continue.
It doesn't matter if you are or you aren't.
I just wanted
Why
to
don't you
leave that
take
for
your
the
seat?
record, sir.
Why don't you take your seat? Thank you. You know, when you get done, you're done. You've been done for a while. We've been very tolerant. So we're down to two questions. The motion would either be to approve or deny, as I see it.
Chairman Bose, isn't there a third one? Could it be withdrawn?
No, we can't withdraw. We can't withdraw. So our motion would be, the public hearing is closed. So your motion, whomever chooses to make it, would either be to approve the application as it's presented or not. So you can make a motion to approve and we'll vote, or you can make a motion to deny and we'll vote. That seems to me the two appropriate motions.
So the next step would be for them to come back with a new.
Who knows what they're going to do?
Proposal. I mean, that's.
Who knows what they're going to do? You have to make a determination first. Go ahead.
Why wouldn't we be permitted to continue it to allow staff and the applicant to update and correct?
Based on what I hear from the city attorney, it's not been noticed properly, so
but
the application that's before us is not what's been presented to us by the applicant. So if the applicant chooses to pursue a revised application, it's going to have to be properly noticed. Rewind the watch and do it all over. 90 days from now, we'll get to look at it again, or maybe 60. All right? 45-day noticing. Typical. Plus the staff time,
Mr.
another
Ludicky
30
is saying
days.
20.
Pardon?
Mr. Ludicky is saying 20.
Pardon?
Mr. Ludicky is saying 20 days.
20. Oh, okay.
For notice.
Plus the staff time to prep, which,
Well, at least 60.
yep. Plus we have some other very sensitive hearings coming up, right? So, what's your pleasure, guys?
I move that we adopt resolution number 17-20 approving conditional use permit number 16-03.
Thank you. You have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion fails 6-0, so the application is denied. Choice for the applicant is to reapply or appeal. Right? Is that correct? Okay. I'd suggest when y'all come back, put the ducks in a row, please. What? Yeah. Okay, next item, last public hearing is the general plan amendment, 1704, draft master plan of complete streets, amendment to chapter 1620 of the subdivision ordinance. So the public hearing's open on this item. Excuse me. Just for the record, I attended the community open house here recently, which was hosted by the city talking about the Lancaster Boulevard Bikeway and the 15th Street East and the 15th Street West roundabout. Also, the master plan for complete streets and Revive 25. Thank you for the invitation.
We were gratified that we got, I think, some reasonably good public participation in that effort. And a lot of credit to our development engineering and capital engineering staff for putting all that together.
Fine job. So I do have one, before you start, Brian?
Sure.
In reading through all these documents, the plan for physical mobility and so forth, talking about the specific plan issues and all the other references. It references a lot of departments in the city that have been renamed, which don't appear to have been corrected. I don't know if you guys are still in the process of doing that.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look at that and pick up the.
For instance, it's the Development Services Department, not the Planning Department. Development Services has planning section in it and the Public Works section and all of those things. It also talks about redevelopment agency, for instance, but we don't have that anymore. So, I don't expect we're going to be adopting this tonight. It's a very voluminous thing, but
yes, quite a bit.
Anyway, I just thought I'd bring that to your attention before you start. Go ahead. Thank you.
You bet. And the presentation that I'm about to give you, I've given once to the ADC and refined it as a result of that. And I'd like to thank Trolise for helping me do that as we try to get closer and closer to what I think is a good explanation of what we're really trying to achieve in the Master Plan of Complete Streets. So I'm going to start, and I apologize for the somewhat late hour, but I'm going to start with a question. And the question is, are these two streets, this one in Fort Collins, Colorado, and this one in Lancaster, the same?
Sure, they got a yellow line.
They got a yellow line down the middle. Yes, Google Earth manages to do that. I think that most people who look at this would tell you they're not the same. However, there is something that is the same about them. And I think that if you remember nothing else about why we're going through this process, I want to highlight it. I'm going to take this a little bit closer to home, and I'm going to ask you if these two streets are the same. Lancaster Boulevard back in March of 2009, and Lancaster Boulevard as it is today, or in this case, August of 2011. Are they the same? Yeah. Very good. The width is the same. The right-of-way is the same. But the streets are not the same. And if we go back and look at the question that I asked you initially, are these two streets the same? There is something about them that is the same, and that is the right-of-way. Both of them are 120 feet wide. But the issue is, how is that space designed and how is it allocated within that right-of-way? And the reason that I think that that's the thing that I really want to get across is because that's what we're really looking to try to do with the Master Plan of Complete Streets. We are looking to try to set up a situation and a system where the design of our streets recognizes all of the various factors that go into how they operate. And that seems like it makes a lot of sense, but quite frankly, for decades, we have operated simply on the basis of streets of a certain right-of-way are to operate a certain way. And that's just not the case. So when we look at the things that we're really setting as our key concepts for our master plan is, first, streets are complex. Streets are complex things. They are complex things because human beings use them. Anything that a human being uses becomes complex because we all have our own approaches, judgments, and other things that we take into account as we use space. And because of that, a one-size-fits-all approach is not effective for complex situations. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in this. Furthermore, our streets are evolving. Their needs and the way that they serve the land along them changes over time. Those evolving situations require design flexibility to address different situations, different facts that we find out as we go along. I say this, and I think it's really important. If streets are not adaptable and resilient, the city is not adaptable and resilient. The reason for that is our street rights of way are the largest single thing that we have, that we manage as a city. They're larger than all of our parks put together. They're larger than our public space that we have. Other than that, our streets are our biggest single thing that we have. And the city really has to be the final authority on how street design is decided and how public right-of-way is allocated. Now, that also seems very straightforward, but I will tell you there are a lot of agencies out there that think that they want to tell us how our streets need to be designed and managed. But I'm going to state that really that needs to be us. We're looking at taking a different approach. And that different approach relies on the fact that human behavior, which governs traffic engineering, is fundamentally adaptable. That the design of streets can affect the way in which people use them and affect the way in which that space is perceived. One of the people that I've spent over the last 5 years a lot of time studying is a Dutch traffic engineer who's unfortunately passed away now, named Hans Monderman. He's known primarily for his concept of shared space as creating more safe environments. And he says that every road tells a story. It's just that so many of our roads tell the story poorly, or they tell the wrong story. In other words, the way they're designed are not related to the way that we really would prefer to have that space or that street used. Design really does matter, and we're going to talk about this middle thing here, because this is an issue in our city. We're not alone in that. This is the main issue in most of the United States. Streets that are designed for high speeds, freeways, because everything moves in the same direction and you don't have you don't have cross traffic and you have other ways, they are relatively safe streets. Streets where, or traffic facilities, I should say, streets where things move very slowly are also fairly safe because people have the time to adjust to those complex environments. Design, I think I really love this little meme. You know, if you need a sign to tell people to slow down, you designed your street wrong. That's as simple as it gets. And if you followed any of the issues with how speed limits are set, they are directly tied to the design of those streets. Our priorities for street design, as we're proposing under the Master Plan of Complete Streets, first and foremost, safety for all expected users. And we'll get back to that in a little bit. Cost, both the initial cost for the facility and the long-term maintenance cost to keep it in good shape. Traffic volume is not as important. The capacity of the street is not as important as the first two. If you start with that and don't take the first two priorities into account, you're going to have problems. And traffic speed is actually the least important. Traffic speed really has to be something that is adapted to meet our other values and objectives for the particular street that we're looking at. You can't use traffic speed to govern everything else. So let's talk a little bit about safety. This is where I got some help from Trelease, so I have to give him some credit. How does Lancaster compare as far as other places in its safety? One way you can analyze that It's not the industry way, but one way you can analyze it is how many fatalities per 100,000 people did you have in your city? Well, I was able to go and find some of that data. In Stockholm, it's 0.7. In Paris, it's 1.7. In San Francisco, closer to home, 3.4. Los Angeles, 6.3. Atlanta, 9.7. There we are, 14.1. We're not quite as bad as Johannesburg, but we're close. As I said, that's not the way the industry standard looks. I got some help from Trelease on this. If you look at per, 100 million?
100 million vehicle miles
traveled. So it helps deal with situations where you have more spread out development patterns and people drive more. In the United Kingdom, it's 0.578. The U.S. national average is actually 1.1. You break that down. The urban average overall is 1.09. The rural average, always higher, 1.87. Far more deadly collisions in rural areas, given the number of miles traveled. Japan, 1.28. There we are, 2.19. That's actually our highest rolling 12-month average that we looked at. So it may not be entirely within 2015. We really tried to look at that highest 12 months to get an understanding. Bahrain, 2.2. South Korea, 3.2. So we have some issues in terms of the safety of our streets. And a lot of it has to do with the design of our streets and the speeds that they encourage. So what are we going to look at when we look at street design under this plan? We're going to look at the issue of mobility versus accessibility, which is actually a very important thing. That gets back to that unsafe speed of 30 to 50 miles an hour that I talked about. Emergency access, have to make sure that that's accounted for. Street networks, which actually is very closely tied to emergency access, not just our individual streets. We're going to start taking a much better look at our street networks, how what happens in one segment affects other areas that are connected. We understand that streets are part of our overall design and of the productivity of the city, and we have to start thinking about how are we going to evaluate our street performance. The state of California has changed some of that. Agencies that are important funding sources for us are changing the way they look at that also. So, mobility versus accessibility. Mobility is the ability to move quickly from one place to another. And if we look at highways and freeways, they're pretty simple, and they do that pretty well. You don't have to worry about traffic lights, you don't have to worry about crossings, you don't have to worry about pedestrians, other kinds of things occurring on these facilities. But streets, the things that serve our local land use in our cities, are complex, as we mentioned before, and they serve multiple users. If you look at this picture out of Burlingame in Northern California or in the Bay Area, what do you have here? You have people who are driving, people who are parked, people on bicycles, people who are crossing, traffic signals, all kinds of things that drivers have to be aware of, and pedestrians have to be aware of, and bicyclists have to be aware of, and all of that together with a lot of people making individual decisions is what makes that complex. And streets have always been that way. You know, if you look at Lancaster Boulevard in the 1920s, you know, look at this mix of stuff going on. People driving, people walking. I don't see anyone on a bicycle, but you get the idea. It's all mixed together. We can go back further. That's Pompeii. And these were the crossing stones for people to cross streets in Pompeii. I used to think that was traffic calming, but it really wasn't. It was because of the kind of stuff that used to sit in the streets.
You see that in Ephesus, too.
Yeah. So this was a way to keep out of the mess that was in the streets, but it had a secondary effect.
Public sewer.
Right, because obviously if you're riding a chariot or driving a wagon, you had to maneuver your way through that. This mobility versus accessibility question is really, I think, going to be the major challenge that this city deals with as it considers the design or redesign of streets over the next decade or two. Because we have a lot of what are referred to as STROADs. They're street road hybrids. The futon of transportation investments, as Chuck Marone puts it, which I think is kind of a good way to look at it. And the reason for that is because, let's take a look at a couple of streets here. This happens to be Avenue K. This is actually Soledad Canyon Road in Santa Clarita. Are these streets designed primarily for mobility or for accessibility? In other words, are they designed to serve the local land use along there, or are they designed primarily to move traffic quickly? And if you can't give a clear answer, it's because they actually have been designed to try to do both things at once, and they end up not doing either one very well. I don't know if you're like me, but if you were coming along here and making this turn into the Target Center, you notice this pedestrian. You're the right kind of driver. You're going to stop and wait till that pedestrian crosses over, legally, that driveway. But if you're also like me, you are constantly looking in your rearview mirror for the person who's coming along behind you at 40 miles an hour, not paying attention, and you now begin to understand this mobility, accessibility question a little bit better. Same thing here. This maybe isn't as bad, except that they do allow left turns across 3 lanes of traffic, and I don't know if you've tried to cross 3 or 4 lanes of traffic moving at 40 or 50 miles an hour, but that's quite a judgment thing. And as you notice, that is a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit that's posted. This constitutes the majority of the major streets and arterials that we have in our cities. And trying to deal with this situation is going to be a major challenge, because as you get more and more development occurring and you get more and more use of the streets, it actually becomes a lot easier to have these act more for accessibility than for mobility. Traffic signals and other things, just by their nature, allocate time at intersections, and they cause more delay in travel. STROAD, there's actually a definition of it in the online Urban Dictionary. Describes a street road built for high speed but with multiple access points, and you can see all of this thing. And what I really like is it includes that it's unsafe at any speed. It's really unsafe if you're moving quickly. It's unsafe if you're moving slowly, for all sorts of reasons. And once again, design flexibility, the ability to start correcting some of these issues, is very important. High speed certainly increases risk, particularly if you're a pedestrian. If you get hit as a pedestrian at 20 miles an hour, you'll probably live. You'll be injured likely, but you'll probably live. If you get hit at 30 or 40, your chances are a lot worse. Let's talk a little bit about emergency response. We really want to try to create better street networks in our community. And you may think that we do an okay job. The general large-scale grid does help us in some of that regard. But when we met with our fire department, I pointed this situation out to them and asked what they thought about it. Now, the fire code dictates widths of streets and things, but they don't talk about networks of streets. And this, I thought, was really interesting. I asked our fire officials, if you were at this fire station and had to get to this house, how would you travel? Well, the way you have to travel, that quarter of a mile, is that.
This is 20th and
right.
8?
Yes. And actually Sean Grizzard, who some of you may be aware of, was one of the people I was meeting with. And he started laughing, and he said, I was actually stationed at this station, and that happened. We had something over here, and I don't know if they went this way or went back around this way. But rather than just concentrate, as I said, on the individual street, we really need to look at how our networks work together, because this is an incredible distance to travel to reach a quarter mile, and our fire code doesn't address it. So I think we are going to have to address it as an example. If you have better networks, the city has always been trying to encourage more walking environments, more bicycling environments. Better connected networks make for a better amount of destination and land that you can cover on foot. So you can see that the less connected your street network, the fewer destinations that you can reach in a typical 5-minute walk. So something that we want to also keep in mind. I talked a little bit about productivity of streets. Our friend Chuck Marone from Strong Towns compares this in his hometown in Brainerd and says, you know, back in 1894, this was our street. West Front Street, very productive street. That's the same street today. Lots of investment in infrastructure on that street, but not serving a whole lot of development. And when it comes to the issue that your street improvements need to be maintained by the amount of revenue that you're generating back from them, this becomes a problem. We don't have to go that far to see this. We had a very productive Lancaster Boulevard in the 1920s, but by March of 2010, it wasn't a very highly productive street. But we fixed that, and we fixed it by design. We now have a street that's incredibly productive in terms of what it returns given the amount of investment that's in it. We'll look at using various techniques, particularly if we're looking at traffic calming as a part of integrated design. That can include our bulb outs to shorten crossing distances, slow vehicle turns at corners, in places where we expect a lot of pedestrian traffic, neighborhood traffic circles to calm traffic movements. We hear a lot from our residents in various neighborhoods about the speed that they have to deal with. In other cases where we're trying to provide more of an alternative ability for transportation improvements, we can look at very effective ways to add bike lanes or on-street parking or other kinds of things of that type. Complete streets really do improve the opportunity for safety, accessibility, and productivity, and we can take all of that into account. We've had success at Valley Central Way. That was basically paint, but we've had a 70% reduction in our vehicle collisions since we undertook this several years ago. One of the things that we are also going to have to do, and the general plan amendment is a big part of this, is start changing the way that we evaluate our street performance. Our current one is a vehicular level of service. That works well in certain circumstances, but it doesn't work well in all of them. Part of that is it measures only vehicle delay. That's really the only thing that it evaluates. It doesn't consider productivity or economic issues. And actually, although it's been something evaluated for a number of years under the California Environmental Quality Act, it's been eliminated from consideration of that under CEQA. From an environmental standpoint, the state is going more to a vehicle miles traveled approach. For us, it gives us a little bit more flexibility in how we want to look at things. So what we're proposing are variable type of metrics where we can use the right evaluation tools essentially to see if we're achieving what we want to do. We can look at multimodal levels of service. We can consider things that are important to the adjacent land use. There may be situations where turning an excess travel lane back into on-street parking for businesses may be more valuable. We can consider pedestrian and bicyclist safety and accessibility. That's what flexibility in design gives us. And so what we would propose in the general plan amendment is that in our infill area, we're going to allow situations where vehicular LOS less than D at a peak hour may be acceptable. And we're not going to necessarily require mitigation simply on the basis of LOS numbers. We have to consider what else goes into that or what other effects may occur if we have to mitigate that. And we recognize that because in this core area from 20th East to 30th West, L to I, that it's the most mixed development area of the city. It's denser. It's got more going on. And if we want to continue to encourage that kind of infill approach, we need to make sure that we have the proper evaluation techniques to not discourage that kind of development either. In our other areas, or what we will call the outlying areas, we're generally going to retain our level of service measurement. But we can, under the proposal, evaluate whether the mitigation of those LOS impacts adversely affects other kinds of things that we're trying to create. For example, let's suppose that we had an area where a right turn lane in an intersection could reduce a level of service impact. But that same improvement may also increase the crossing distance for school children or for a transit stop, and that may cause differences in timing of signals or other kinds of effects that we don't really want. So the goal, once again, is to give our design team, our design people, the ability to make those judgments rather than be held to a rigid standard that says you have to mitigate the LOS impact. Now we're saying you have an LOS impact. What are the other factors that we can consider when we look at that also? Why are the general plan changes necessary? Number one, they stand as the statement of the city's approach to street design. They establish the legal and policy basis for design flexibility. In other words, the city has to say, this is our policy, this is our approach. We're putting it in the general plan so that it's out there for our public and our development community to understand. We will recognize that the Master Plan of Complete Streets is the city's street design planning document. That's a very important thing, especially when you start dealing with outside agencies. They want to see that kind of thing put into a policy document. And finally, I mentioned how other agencies are beginning to change the way they look at things. Southern California Association of Governments, the County Metropolitan Transportation Authority. In fact, MTA, I believe now is requiring, as I understand it, that you have to have a complete streets policy, or you do not qualify for funding under their rules. So the city's really already taken a lot of strides towards this. Its master plan of trails and bikeways, it's recently adopted safe routes to school, and what you've seen already out in the community with some of the things that we've done. So that's my presentation. It's a lot to take in, and I expect that you're going to want to spend a little bit of time evaluating this and going through it.
Wow.
Thanks.
My gosh, Brian. That is a wow. Thank you. So, I'll save it. I've got a bunch. I've got a bunch of markups and questions, and I'll save it till the next time this is on the agenda, which is what, next month? Yeah. I don't know about you, but is the wall there? Did you? Yeah, that one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I would ask that you formally continue it because we did notice it. So.
Right. Okay. So, do we have any speakers on this?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Okay, well, thank you. So a motion would be in order. We'll keep the public hearing open. A motion would be in order to continue this to our next regular meeting, if that's your pleasure. Whomever wants to make that motion.
I move to continue this item until the next, our next meeting.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes 6-0. I did get a question from an audience member saying, is this available on the city's website? Yes, there is a web page where all of the documents and all the information is available.
Right. And we have that link as well, but it's in the planning section, clearly identified in the left-hand column. Okay. Let's see. Director's announcements.
I don't have any.
All right. Commission agenda. Vice Chair Howell will be covering the city council meeting next week in my stead. Thank you for doing that.
Vacation.
Okay, let's see. Public business on the floor. This is the opportunity. Do we have a speaker from public? Okay. Oh, we have two. Oh, okay, great. So we have two people in the audience and two speaker cards, so let's hear them.
Lisa Four.
Ms. Four. Fran's going first. Okay.
It's all right.
Great.
Just real quick, I just had, well, good evening, and thank you for taking my time here. I just had one simple question. When somebody gets a permit for a restaurant, to open a restaurant here in Lancaster, and as far as the signage, are they told when they get their permit what the signage should be, and how large and what style? And at that time, does the applicant have to use a city printer or architect for drawing the signage for their building?
We'll let our staff respond to that one.
So when a restaurant opens, they have to submit what they call a sign program, sign criteria. They submit a copy of what they're proposing their sign to look like, and staff reviews it and approves it, and it's got the dimensions and the colors and all, and that's what they're allowed to put up.
Okay.
So it is approved by staff prior to installation, in
So,
theory.
so in other words, you're saying they have to go by specific colors?
It depends on the restaurant and what they submitted and what was approved. So there's not a palette of colors citywide. It depends on the individual restaurant.
It would also depend on the location. In some shopping centers, for instance, the shopping center would have a sign program approved by the owner, landlord, whatever, that the tenant would have to conform to, which the city has, in effect, pre-approved.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Now another real quick one. 180th East, 180th and O. Is that in Palmdale or Lancaster, or is that in the Mooney somewhere?
180th
180
East.
East.
And O.
That would be unincorporated Los Angeles County.
LA County.
So that would be LA.
That would be the county of Los
If a problem
Angeles.
arises in there, I have to go to LA.
You gonna go farming out there?
No, a person asked me a question of putting a walking, I went Sunday, and what they want is to put on Highway O, Avenue O, I mean, and 80th, across, there's a school there. And, but they only have two on 180th, they have the stops, regular stop sign, but the O is continuously going, and when it's school time, the kids crossing the street it's terrible. And it's not a real super busy highway, but it's busy enough when you have children crossing it. And the gentleman asked me on this if they could get, crosswalks, stops, that they have to stop.
That's up to the county of Los Angeles.
So that's why, so I gotta go do that. Let's see, that's what I do. I never sit still. Thank you very much for listening.
All right, very
to me.
good. Thank you for
And
your
good night.
comment. Thank you. All right, Ms. Four.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome back.
Oh, yeah, I'm tired. I bet you are too. Well, that's okay. Just a quick comment. Today, I was on my way to work, and there's a piece of trash in the road by the bus stop over there on 15th. And so it was a piece of somebody's automobile came off, so I stopped. And I took it off the road because I realized it was going to be a road hazard. Thank God there was nobody behind me, and I had a few minutes so I didn't get run over. But I feel that in some way that resembles what you have to do as a planning commission. Your job is to not only approve property, but to approve the highest and best use of the property that will not only make that piece of property look good for the other surrounding pieces of property, but also create the best good for the society or the community as a whole. And so when you approve developments that don't fit in an area, like there was a couple of items on the agenda that I looked at it and I go, that doesn't fit in that area. Why is that even have been pre-approved? It was tentative. It was one of the items, the Abbey Incorporated project that's on Avenue K and Sahoya. That area is just desperately trying to remain as a light industrial and a commercial area, and yet you want to approve 75 units for a multifamily, low income and homeless individuals. And I'm going like, well, that's not really the best fit for that land. So I understand that you have a lot of criteria that you need to adhere by when you look at projects and adhere to them and say, okay, is that the best fit for that land? And is this the highest and best use? And I just want you to keep that in mind when you look at these projects, not just what's good for that parcel, but what's across the street and how is it going to affect the roads. And on your idea with the emergency, I couldn't agree with you more. I have an office building off of Low Tree, and I can't tell you the number of times I get stopped by emergency vehicles every single day. Sometimes it's as many as 6 a day, because they all use Avenue J to get to the hospital, because there's only one entrance to the emergency room. There's not a back entrance. There's not an entrance off of J8. There's not an entrance off of any other road than J. So for those of us who are business owners, and right now they're trying to sell that building up at the front, and it's been for sale for months.
Actually, it's sold, Lisa.
Oh, it did. Thank God. Thank you. Who bought it, by the way?
Antelope Valley Joint Union High School District.
Oh, good. They're going to move the high school district. Thank you. Well, that's a good use. Thank you very much. But still, it creates a noise condition and everything else. So if you could create a back road to Antelope Valley Hospital so that the emergency vehicles could use it, I would really appreciate it. And maybe even an exit off the freeway. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're working on that, matter of fact.
Thank you very much.
We are.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you. All right, so, nothing further, Mr. Ludicky?
Nothing else.
All right. So we're going to stand adjourned in memory of the seamen, the 4 seamen on Fitzgerald, USS Fitzgerald, who were tragically killed in an accident at sea recently. And we'll adjourn to our special meeting for agenda review Monday, July 10th, 2017 at 4:30 p.m. here in these chambers. Thank you all for your work tonight. Appreciate it.